Don't not be Thibodeau. And here it comes. It's about to come in. Oh my God. They didn't. They took Sauce Gardner. Oh my God, they don't want an edge. Maybe he likes Jermaine Johnson at 10. Then we're not going to get a wide receiver?
Garrett Wilson, wide receiver. Oh my God, no edge.
Was sitting there
The Jets traded up. The Jets traded up. Are we taking JJ? Are we taking JJ? Because I know Braden is in New Zealand saying, we should get Young, Mike. He's definitely saying that. JJ! We got Johnson! We got Johnson at 26! We got Johnson at 26! This is great! Yes! They took Roger McCreary. They didn't take Dean. We traded up. We can get the Kobe Dean. We can get the Kobe Dean. It really is. They took Breece Hall. They took Breece Hall. Wow. I mean, look, I love Breece Hall. But there's also Jeremy Ruckert, who I think is the best tight end in the class personally. They just Welcome. Technical difficulties already. Hopefully we got those out of the way. I couldn't even see my own intro. That makes me sad because it usually pumps me up. But I don't need pumping up because tonight is a night I've been waiting for a long time. It's wide receiver night, baby. And we don't just got Dom. We got a surprise guest. We got, well, I'll introduce him when I introduce him, right? Right. That just makes total sense. So in that spirit, let's get ready to do an introduction. Let's bring in my co-host for this show. Give him some background music. He earns some background music. This man, and I say man, went down to Alabama and he roomed with Green Bean. I mean, we should give him our full respect just for that. He slept in the same room as Green Bean. He is the video analyzing, interviewing, Italian Stallion, the greatest information Jets YouTube content provider in the world. Thompson.
Wow, it's been a while since I had one of those introductions, man. I forgot what it sounded like, dude. Thanks, Jeremy. I appreciate it. What's up, chat? Happy to be here, man. Sunday's always Sunday fun day, man. Sunday fun day.
I needed to pump people up. I don't got work tomorrow, so I'm feeling a little better than I usually do on Sunday.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
We gotta celebrate.
And we got receivers here. That's always fun.
Wide receivers are always fun.
That's
right.
I
don't care because when I was a kid, I don't know about you. Right now, I'm different, obviously, and I understand the importance of the offensive line and the defensive line and controlling, the battle lines. I mean, that's where the game is played, won and lost. I get all that. But when I was a kid growing up, the only picks were wide receivers, running backs, or quarterbacks. I mean, those were the sexy picks.
Yeah, especially in this day and age of of fantasy football, people don't care so much about what happens in the trenches as much as they do like who's really putting numbers up on the stat sheet, so on and so forth. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but that it is what it is. People love the guys who have the ball in their hands and score. So
yeah, no, absolutely. They want to see playmakers. I mean, also linebackers, when you go high on a linebacker that people are excited about, that could be a sexy pick. Mm-hmm. Edges. I mean, in my lifetime, I grew sour on edges probably because I'm a Jets fan, right? So I started my fandom with like Gastineau and Klecko and Marty Lyons and Abdul Salam. And then afterwards, it felt like every time we took an edge, it was just, in comparison, it never felt like a hit to me. It was always like, oh, so I always considered those like impossible picks. Like it's impossible to pick an edge. And then later I realized it's really impossible to pick a quarterback because it's been 40 years for me, and we really haven't gotten the dream quarterback.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Well, hopefully that ends soon.
Hopefully. I mean, look, even if we get, it's harder. Obviously, you've explained it a million times why it's so much harder to get that dream quarterback via trade or free agency because you don't have that window of cheap quarterback, right?
That's right.
We're going to have to, yeah.
there's something to be said about that rookie salary, rookie quarterback salary. That's the time to really build and really thrive. You know?
Right. And even when it ends and you have to pay them money, at least you're not paying draft picks and money. You're just
true.
the money.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm trying to tell people like with Lamar Jackson, it makes no sense. Like if he wants more money than Baltimore is willing to pay him in just money, what makes you think we're going to give him that money and be so different than Baltimore that we're going to value him so much higher than Baltimore values him that we're not only going to give him the money they won't give him, we're also going to throw in 3 first-round picks.
Yeah.
Far-fetched.
Yeah. Well,
far-fetched.
I mean, I think it's far-fetched with Lamar anyway, but that's for another show.
Sure.
Everyone's talking about quarterbacks the past 2 weeks. Let's talk about draft picks, man.
Right. No, absolutely. And the truth is before he even became available, hopefully our quarterback issue will be long resolved by then.
Yeah.
Because I don't see that being a situation. I don't think if he goes anywhere, it's not going to be for a long time because there's going to be a long, hard-fought negotiation and back and forth and franchise tag and all that garbage. But you're right. It's time to move on to something that we don't have to trade for. We don't have to worry about something that we have, something that's ours. We have draft capital, and there are some great players coming. And before we begin, let's bring in your guest and now my guest, but you're bringing him in. You met him in Alabama.
Yeah. So our special guest for the evening is someone who I knew only through the internet, just from being in tune with all the Jet publications and whatnot. I read a lot of what Dylan does, and he happens to be friendly with Green Bean, and he introduced me to Dylan, and let me tell you, when he and I were down in Alabama, we think alike. Our minds are alike. The way we see football players, the way we look at prospects, the way we identify these guys through strength, weaknesses, big play, bad play, so on and so forth. It was just like a really, really good mesh. So I figured, why not get him on here and have another guy who can, spit out some of the, nitty gritty details, deep dive of these receivers with us. So with nothing left to do, why don't we bring on from Jet Nation, Dylan Terraman.
Here we go. Welcome to the show, Dylan.
Gentlemen, how's it going?
Happy to see you. See, you're first timer, dude. You don't get that introduction like I get, man.
Well,
another show or two, and then what happens? Yeah,
I would have done it. But you just introduced them. I was going to say, a young-looking, fresh-faced, but old enough to go to Alabama, Dylan from Jet Nation. So you can have it that way.
So I appreciate you coming on with us tonight, Dylan. Really, like I said, I meant what I said. Like, there's when you click with someone at that level, like that we did, in the way we kind of see the game, and especially these prospects that are coming up. It's there's few and far between. The draft nerds like us, man.
Yeah, I mentioned to you offline that I was listening to your interior offensive line show before I came on tonight, just to get a feel of the structure of the show, just to see what I was getting myself into with this chat that is super smart, so I've been told, and I'm going to be tested. So I've brought my A game, I hope. But I watched your interior offensive line show, and I paused it, and I guessed all 10 just based off the feel of your Twitter, what I've met, and talking to you, those 3 practices that we spent together down in Mobile. That was my first time meeting Green Bean, so I'm glad that I also got to meet some of the other people that do Jets content, including you. So that was a great time. And seeing our wide receiver list before the show this week, it's kind of funny how we align almost perfectly on nearly everything there.
Yeah, just about. I mean, it's pretty dang close.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to a show, man. Listen, I've said it 1,000 times. Anyone who's been with me or seen me, on Jeremy's show or with Green Bean or wherever, I may pop up. I said that I really think that the wide receiver position is a sneaky need for the Jets this year. I really don't know. I'm of the belief that we're probably going to cut ties with Corey Davis. And possibly, I think it's hard to really really wrap my head around the fact that it could be Corey Davis and Braxton Berrios. I think that's more than likely one of the two. But that being said, we don't have Jeff Smith. You know, he's unrestricted and more than likely probably not going to be re-signed. So, you know, just say you get rid of Corey Davis, you're then left with Garrett Wilson. You're left with Elijah Moore, who's still a question mark. You know, we still don't know. You know, he hasn't really. There was a lot of issues that came up year 2, which kind of stunted his development. One of them being, you know, the offensive coordinator that didn't scheme him into the offense too much. You know, on top of his diva nature, so on and so forth, on top of the issues that he may have had with Zach. So it's still a big question mark. You know, you love the talent, but I don't know, you know, we can't really depend on him as all the Jets fans really depended on him coming out of his rookie campaign. We all thought it was, you know, sky's the limit. You know, I think those expectations have to be tempered a little bit. So you take that, you take Garrett, you take Elijah Moore, you know, maybe Braxton Berrios on a reduced contract, but you know what he offers. And, you know, he's very, you know, not a very high priority in the offense, you know, and then we still have Denzel Mims, which is, again, another question mark. It's a sneaky need, I think. What do you guys think?
You got this, or you want me to go first?
Definitely you go first.
I was going to say, I had 6 names written down, obviously the 6 names that are on the depth chart for wide receiver. And really, outside of Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, there's no lock for 2023 that they're going to actually be there. So, and even like you said, Elijah Moore is a question mark. He had a down year 2. Hopefully Nathaniel Hackett can do what he does well and put him in positions to actually thrive in this offense, which I think he can, especially if he is moved permanently to the slot. But Corey Davis, yeah, I had written down cut or trade candidate. Hopefully they could package him in a deal to go get that man, Aaron Rodgers. That's my dream scenario number 1. Braxton Berrios, cut, restrict, or restructure candidate for sure. You can't pay a guy who's coming off one of those types of years in 2022, $6 million to be a return man and at best a wide receiver 4. I understand we might like him as a player or as a person, and it was fun rooting for him to come back last year, but that deal is a bit inflated right now, and I think they could get out of it. Yeah. Denzel Mims, he could be another trade piece down the road. Who knows if Nathaniel Hackett's going to use him or like him in his offense. And then Irvin Charles, that's your futures deal. So he's a net 0. So you got really a big need at wide receiver if you do move on from Corey Davis and or Braxton Berrios and or Denzel Mims. 2 of those 3 guys could easily walk out the door, and you're looking at it maybe not at 13 overall, but if you trade back in the first round, you could potentially steal a guy that's sliding, or probably 2nd to 4th round, you better be hammering home wide receiver, because if you don't get one in the first round and those guys walk out the door, you're left with a big deficit, no matter who the quarterback is.
Yeah. And obviously, you know, it's all taken with a grain of salt because free agency hasn't happened. And maybe it's just something that, you know, they kind of shift the focus there. But as of right now, you hit the nail on the head. Like, you know, it's something that it's going to have to be addressed one way or another, I think. I don't see the Jets running it back with the same exact wide receiver room as last year. What about you, Jeremy?
Yeah, so obviously I don't see us, you know, sticking with Corey Davis for the current contract. I don't think, and I'm not claiming that it's a super high contract considering what happened to the wide receiver market last year. It's just high for us. And also he's missed a lot of games the last 2 years. He's had trouble staying healthy. A lot of us have been frustrated with drop passes. I don't necessarily, I'm not frustrated enough to totally not believe in the guy. I mean, clearly he's not a number 1 wide receiver. He's not a WR1, but people will pay $12 to $15 million for a solid number 2 wide receiver. No. I think there's a possibility of a restructure, maybe if he really loves the Jets and gives them some kind of hometown discount. But I agree 100%. All we have fully is Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. I would like to believe that Denzel Mims is still alive as a possibility to be someone that can contribute on this team, with the hope that maybe the exit of Mike LaFleur and a new offensive coordinator, maybe there's truth to it. Maybe MLF didn't like him.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to digest still, even after 3 years.
Yeah. Well,
that you can't do something with 6'4", 4.3 speed. Like, it's very, very hard for me to believe that. And I saw flashes in his rookie year, like when Adam Gase and Sam Darnold were you know, his tools, like, you know, his surroundings. I just think there's a possibility. I don't think we can rely on it. I don't think it could be part of the real plan. but I still want to believe he'll be somewhere, whether he's WR4 or 5, and he's someone that'll get opportunities that can break out and maybe not be a superstar, but really contribute to our room. And so I do believe that wide receiver is a possibility for us in this draft. I almost have to ask, how can it not be? If we don't really have that much money to shop for anyone, I feel like we need another reliable receiver in the room. One of the things I do want to say as we talk about these receivers and we start going over who's available, Tigo, talking Jets with Tigo, has really pointed out that it feels like a lot of the highly top-ranked guys are more slot receivers, and I am not for that. Like, I don't want a slot receiver.
In this draft class you're talking about?
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. That at least the strength of this class is either the slot onlys or the guys that probably project at the next level in slot, meaning based off of their skill set, their size, and their traits or whatnot. Like I'd probably say out of my top 10, I probably have 5 or 6 guys, which I think are probably going to be slot guys at the next level. Including some of the guys that just missed my top 10, like Parker Washington from Penn State's a perfect example. I think he's a great football player, but he's going to be typecasted. He's not going to be, he doesn't have the skill set to play on the outside, to get off of, big man press coverage, strong defensive backs, so on and so forth. So,
yeah. So I do have concerns because of that, because I feel like that Elijah Moore not only should be in the slot, but we shouldn't just double. Like, I don't feel good about using a draft pick with all of our needs on a wide receiver. It's going to be another slot unless it's somebody JD believes, because I do trust them. Trust them. If they believe either Elijah Moore can move back out to the outside or the guy they draft can move out to the outside, or they're just going to shift them and rotate them, because I understand we'll play a lot of 12 personnel. So we might not have a million scenarios where we have 3 wide receivers anyway.
Yeah.
So
well, and also the new offensive coordinator has, he has a tendency to really utilize or want his receivers to play part in, as blockers. That bodes well for guys like Denzel Mims. That bodes well for Corey Davis if he's on the roster. What I mean? I don't know how that bodes well for, Elijah Moore. I'm not saying that he's not a willing blocker, but he's not dominant such as the other guys. You know what I mean? And
I would say route running and blocking take priority over just, straight line speed and athleticism in this offense. I think they could definitely covet somebody. And like, to the point of slot, there's not that many big type body receivers. So if you do get rid of a Corey Davis and a Denzel Mims, you are very small at the position. And this draft doesn't really bode well, at least in terms of our top 10s from a big body receiver perspective.
Yeah, there's not many true X's in this in the whole class.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's not it just and different classes just operate differently. A couple years ago when we had the likes of Chase and all those guys coming out, like all those guys can fit and dominate anywhere on the field. That's not the case with the skill sets of these receivers that are coming out. So.
Yeah, and along with the skill set of the group, I think the talent of the group overall is probably a couple steps from what it's been since 2020, 21, and 22 draft classes.
Yeah,
and I said this on my show that Todd McShay right now only has 14 first-round grades total. So not just the wide receiver position, but the entire draft class is looking like a weaker class in 2023. And I think what we're about to talk about, the wide receiver position, is so indicative of the class overall, because this has been the strength position for the past 3 seasons, with 30 plus wide receivers getting drafted the last 3 years. So it's going to be a big change when not so many wide receivers go top end of the draft, but still end up being better steals in like the 3rd to 5th round of this draft.
Yeah. And it just as a reference point for the chat, when Dylan says that Todd McShay has 14 first-round grades, I mean, there's never 32 first-round grades from these top guys, but 20 to 22, maybe 24, that seems to be the norm. And being at 14 is a real big deficit in overall talent. And I think
we picked 13th. So if you think about it, if all the first-round picks that we have on our board or first-round grades go at 14, then 13 is a great spot to trade back from if you don't think you have all the guys there that are worth that pick.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I could totally see, especially if by then we know we're going to be giving away some draft capital in 2024 based on what happens, right, with the quarterback and Favre and trading picks. I could definitely see, and I don't know, I mean, obviously you have to have a trading partner, but if offered, I could see us if the guy that we're not salivating over is not there when we pick, trading back to 22, 23, 24, still getting our second tier level of guys, right?
Yeah.
And picking up some draft capital for 24 to replenish whatever we had to give away.
No, absolutely. I think that's I listen, this is going to be the first year where Joe Douglas doesn't have a full allotment or arsenal of draft picks to go at it. So, he's shown in previous drafts that he'll he'll go down. I think that was his first draft. He did a lot of trading back and trading down and accumulated more assets. Last year, obviously, we know that he went up 2 times, right? He went up for JJ and then he went up for Breece Hall again. So he will move up and down based on where the talent falls on his board. But going into this with only 6 draft picks right now, let alone we still don't know if we're going to lose any draft capital in the acquisition of a quarterback. That's still up in the air. This smells like prime time Joe Douglas trade down year. You marry that with the fact that the overall talent seems to be at a low. I mean, it's a strong draft. I'm not going to say that. It's strong in positions that we don't really need. It's very strong cornerback. It's very strong on the edge. Probably the spots that we're not going to.
tight end.
Tight end. It's a great tight end class.
So many great tight ends.
Yeah, where we're probably not going to go attack or really put a focus on. So, I could see this being a year that we trade back. I know that's going to throw Jets fans into a tizzy, And
I'm going to make it so much worse because I know that there's a handful of needs that are, leaks in the boat that you need to plug up. But when you weigh the value of a potential blue chip player at 13 versus a trade back option and acquiring even a later first and then a 3rd round pick. Like if you can combine those 2 picks versus what you could be getting at 13, I think you could fill 2 needs or 2 depth spots in terms of just swinging for 1 starter at 13. So you got to weigh your options, but I do agree. If it is a weak class, like people are saying, trade back, get a little bit more, but don't trade too far back and don't use anything from 2024. In my opinion, don't waste next year's class, which if this year's a down class, next year could be an up class. Save those picks unless you're really swinging for a home run with like a Rodgers. Then you use those 2024 picks, but not to move up in this class, in my opinion.
No, agreed.
Yeah, I agree, especially if we're going to make some kind of move, no matter who we get. The unfortunate thing that the fact that Zach didn't work out, having to give up whether it's financial capital or draft capital, the one thing we have to replenish and still, move forward and grow and improve the team are those draft picks, right? So I agree 100%. Whatever we're going to have to give for a quarterback, we need to at least do our best to preserve or build picks. We know JD is really good with picks, so they're valuable to us. I believe they have more value than they've ever had in probably all of my Jets fandom. I've never believed more in our picks than now having a general manager like JD.
Yeah.
Especially when he goes out and gets defensive rookie of the year, Sauce Gardner at 4, and offensive rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson at 10. You have to believe that whatever picks he does have, whether they're high, low, 1st, 2nd, 3rd round, he's going to find players. And if they're not starters right away, they could be starters next year when a piece moves on. So you just have to trust him. I'm not saying trust him fully, but you have to have trust that he will make do and make good on most of these picks. Obviously, Mekhi Becton, Zach Wilson, there's swings and misses. He tried for the athletic, tackle and the flashy quarterback. But when it comes down to it, he knows how to draft well that fit the scheme and the needs. So he does a good job.
Yeah.
And we might have some redemption from Becton this year. Let's put our, keep our fingers crossed.
Yep.
Don't plan on it. Don't plan on it. Don't count for it on it.
Yep.
But if it happens, hooray.
Amen, man.
Yeah.
So what do you say? You want to talk about some of these prospects?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's start with honorable mentions. Do you have any honorable mentions?
Yeah, well, I gave one already. I Parker Washington, from Penn State. Like I said, he's a slot only receiver. Very, 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 very good. Very, very active hands. He runs good routes and so on and so forth. I just think that I haven't seen much film at all. Actually, I haven't seen much film at all where he's not either solely dedicated in the slot or being put in motion, kind of, that motion Z and so on and so forth. So I don't really have any basis or to really see how he would fare against press man coverage or a bigger defensive back, but he's got, he's strong after contact. He's got strong hands. He reminds me a lot of a bigger Jahan Dotson. I know it's kind of a weak someone to compare him to because they went to the same school. But he's a little bit, he's a little bit bigger, he's a little bit stronger, but kind of like the same play style. Now, Jahan Dotson proved me wrong. I thought Jahan Dotson was going to just be stuck in the slot and he was going to be Braxton Berrios number 2, but he's not. He really showed in Washington what he can do off the line this year. So that's one guy that didn't make my top 10. Another guy that didn't make my top 10, who I do like, is Jonathan Mingo. Ole Miss receiver. He's a big body. He can probably be your prototypical X. He's got some good run after the catch abilities, but he's just like he's not going to scare you on the outside. He's not going to take the top off the defense. He's got some athletic limitations. So I think he's probably more along the lines of wide receiver depth. WR4 coming in the league, and if he can develop or get better in the places where he shows clear deficits, and like I said, his release, his route running, and his overall athleticism, he could make some noise, but good role player. Those are two of the guys that missed my top 10. What about you, Dylan?
Yeah, those are good picks. Mingo, we did get to see down in Mobile, and I haven't gotten eyes yet on Parker Washington enough to speak intelligently, but I do know that my 11th and 12th wide receiver, I think I watched about 13 or 14 of these guys to be able to rank a top 10. Number 11 and 12, I believe, are both on your list, and they're both Senior Bowl guys. Shrine Bowl and a Senior Bowl. Michael Wilson and Tank Dell. Michael Wilson, I thought he came in as a polished route runner in Mobile. He was winning one-on-ones, both red zone and, deep down the field. I thought he did really well in those positions. Everything I've heard about him from a negative standpoint, though, is his injury history, 2 leg injuries to the same leg and then a foot to the same leg. So he's just got a ton of injuries that need to be cleared up medically. I think in the next week or two, once he gets through the combine process, we'll know way more about him and his stock. But he's somebody I could certainly see being a 5th round steal. Michael Wilson could be. And then Tank Dell, I just had such a hard time putting him in my top 10 because of his size. I know that there's guys like Tutu Atwell and others, Rondell Moore, that have been his similar size that have gotten drafted early. So there's always a team that could do it. It just makes me nervous to put him in my top 10 without a true defined role. I know he's a very good separator and he was really routing people up at the Shrine Bowl. But I just have, or at the Senior Bowl, but I just have such a hard time placing him in my top 10. So yeah. Wilson and Tank Dell, I know they're on your list, so you can speak more onto them. But those are guys that just missed my cut that I need to watch more before I put a full grade on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. It does sound like what I've heard is that Jonathan Mingo is a fighter. So
yeah, listen, he's a big. He's a big boy. He plays physical. He's a fighter, and like I said, he's got the build. He's thick. He's dense. There's a good. I don't know if Green Bean ever put it out on his channel, but he had some time to talk to him one-on-one in an interview, and the guy's. He seems like he knows what he's talking about. Like he's not a space cadet, so I just think that he's limited athletically. That's the big thing with him. So. Mm-hmm. So we'll go into top 10s. We'll start with 10.
Let's do it. Drum roll.
Drum roll. There it is. My number 10 on the list is one of the guys that missed, is one of Dylan's honorable mentions. That's Michael Wilson. I think that Michael Wilson is one of those guys. Now he's got some of the issues that I'm going to talk about, but I think he's one of those guys that's going to prove to be a much better NFL player than he is than he was in college. He's got the size, 6'1.5", 215 pounds. He's solid. He's a hard worker. I love the fact that he's a leader. He was the team captain in 21 and 22. He's got high football IQ. He checks all those boxes. He checks all those boxes off. I've seen interviews where he goes in depth. Like, he talks about how much he studies and watches film. And he's got all those traits of a true leader, a guy that really loves his craft. He's powerful. He's got good burst, good get off the line on press. He plays with good functional strength through the catch. He overpowers. He's an excellent, which I really like for the Jets. He's an excellent blocker, both on the perimeter and downfield. I think he could step in and do that to a high level right away. He's got really, really good ball skills. He's aggressive when the ball's in the air, or in contested catch situations or catching the ball in traffic. Super strong hands. And like I said, I think and I didn't watch a lot of getting Stanford. I don't know how you feel about college tape, Dylan, but I struggle. There's only a limited amount of all 22 tape that I can get my hand on. So a lot of my college breakdown is done on full game film, which isn't ideal. So, you don't get to really, hone in so hard on the player you're trying to study. You got everything going on in a big scheme. So what I saw in Mobile was crisp technique in his route running. He sets the defenders up. He can create separation. He's fast enough. He's got good, he'll do it on film, that yard after the catch ability. But like I said, the big pink elephant in the room is his injury history. He's a fifth-year senior. He only played 36 out of a possible 59 games in college. A Lisfranc injury knocked him out, I think for four games into his sophomore year, and it led into him missing 8 more games his junior year. And then he had another leg injury last year, which cost him 6 games. So that's gonna, he's got to prove that he's through that, and he's got good speed. He'll be a 4.5 in the 4.5s guy, but he's far from a burner. He really depends on his route running expertise to create separation. So he's not gonna, like I said, he's not one of the guys that's gonna take the top off the defense or beat his man vertically a lot. You talked about him in the 5th round. I think he's gonna go higher than that. I think he's a day 2 guy. Probably towards the end of the 3rd round. He could slip into the 4th round. Depending on how his medicals check. But I really like the player. I really liked what I saw of him live one-on-one. Like, he was playing against the best, defenders in college at Senior Bowl, and he showed up time after time in practices and the game. So
yeah, he was definitely impressive in Mobile for sure. And that was my first exposure to him. And I think it's good that you touched on the 2 things that are the hardest to understand about a prospect, because he's the perfect example of both: is the intangibles, the football IQ, which is the interview that you just alluded to, that he was talking about the nuance of routes and how he needs to set up defenders and take their blind spots to find better ways to create separation. And then the medical history, that's stuff that you really only get if you're plugged in to the combine and all that stuff, and you have an inside guy that can really give you the lowdown on these injuries. And he could end up being, like you said, the end of a 3rd round guy that comes in and does really well. And if his medicals turn south, he could be that guy, like I said, in the 5th round, where somebody's going to take him and be like, wow, why did he last till the 5th round? Because he did so well his rookie year. So
yeah,
definitely somebody that has a range of outcomes depending on his medical history.
Yeah, but I really I'm hanging my hat on the hook that when I say that, I think he's one of those guys that's going to be a better pro than he was in college.
Yeah, I could agree with that for sure. Yeah,
if he can prove through all these injuries, the things that hampered him in college are a thing of the past, and they're not something that becomes continuous. He's going to be a player. Yeah, he's not the most twitchy athlete on the field. He might be a little stiff, but what the skills that he has and what he does to win, to create separation, with strength and with speed. I don't think that, like I said, that it's not going to be lost. I think that's only going to get better. So if you can take all the injury stuff away and have him get better, being a true student of the game, I mean, I think sky's the limit for the kid. I think he has a chance, if everything works right, he's going to need a lot to work right to be special,
Mhm.
It's
I
interesting.
agree. Yep.
It's interesting you talk about the intangibles because I see it. A guy from Stanford, very smart. And you like them, so like these things. But when we say intangibles, I think of guys. Just say we're on the same mindset because I think the same thing. I think there are like wide receivers is about obviously there's the size, there's the speed, all this physical ability. They run crisp routes, but I feel like there is this football IQ that comes into play in the position of wide receiver, and I think of guys like if you want to go classic, like Steve Largent. Right, like guys that you might not think by looking at them that they would be superstars, but even like a Julius Edelman, Wayne Corbett. I mean, remember that guy Chris Hogan? They call him always open 7-Eleven. I mean, it feels like there are these wide receivers that come along that nobody could tell. They weren't drafted high. They have no business being as good as they are, but somehow they are. Yeah. Somehow they get open. Is that what you guys are talking about when you talk about the intangibles?
Yeah, well, I'm talking about just yes, you're right. Like the intangibles, like you can tell he's a guy that loves to play football.
Yeah,
exactly. He's a student of the game. He's high character, high morals. He's going to be the first one in the room and the last one out during practices. He goes home and probably sits there and watches film and watches the defenses and does everything he can to be better, 1% better the next day. Like that's the kind of vibe I get from him.
Yeah, this isn't the type of guy that's going to fail because the work ethic and the knowledge isn't there. It would strictly be because of his injuries and because he can't get on the field and consistently stay on the field. I feel like that would be the only thing holding him back from being a pro at the next level.
Yeah. Now, I know you had a different number 10, Dylan, so why don't you tell us yours?
Yeah, so staying somewhat on the West Coast, my number 10 is Puka Nacua, wide receiver from BYU. Another Senior Bowl guy. A lot of the bottom tier of my my third round bucket, my wide receivers 8 through 10, they really all come from the Senior Bowl, and that's just due to exposure. I feel like I said before, I'm not going to come up here and speak intelligently about somebody I haven't watched 3 games on and taken notes. And the Senior Bowl is a great place to go see somebody up in person and get the practice cut ups and watch the one-on-ones and everything. But I don't weigh that heavily into my game film watched on a player. I need to watch 3 games during the season of their season, I should say, take quality notes on the guys. So Puka Nacua is number 10 for me. 625 yards, 5 touchdowns in 2022, 71.6% catch percentage, which is fairly high. 356 yards after catch, which is 57%, which is a very high number. Obviously, he didn't have a ton of production with 625 yards, but to get 57% after catches speaks to his playmaking. Only 3 drops on 67 targets. That's a good drop rate. And then you look back, obviously I said BYU, so everybody's going to cringe in fear about Zach Wilson and everything about that. And that's fine. He was a part-time player when Zach Wilson was at BYU, 206 snaps over Zach's last 2 seasons, played 437 in 2021 with 75 coming in the slot, 350 snaps in 2022 with 53 coming in the boundary position. So now more of a 50-50 boundary slot. And he's only one of 4 guys on my list that I think gives you true boundary and slot versatility. Like we said at the top, it's a big slot only type of draft. So Puka Nacua kind of fits both needs. And I think with everything I just eclipsed with him, knowing the versatility and knowing that he's probably not going to be maybe a 3rd or 4th round guy, this is a guy you want to take a swing on. I think he has speed to take the top off the defense, but he's also super shifty in and out of his breaks. He gets really low. He's a smaller body guy, but I think he does give you boundary versatility. I don't know if he has special teams upside, but when I watch him on film, I think he could be somebody that could be that Braxton Berrios replacement. And if you're a Braxton Berrios replacement, you're going to get brownie points on my list, and I'm going to put you up there and hope that you can, make something happen. So to me, Puka Nacua could fit that mold of a versatility gadget type player to just experiment with, and you're not wasting huge draft capital on him. Like I said, maybe a 3rd, 4th round pick. So
yeah. And I'll say this about Puka Nacua. Tuesday's practice in Mobile, he was the receiver everyone was talking
The first
about.
day, yep.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was the receiver that everyone like, oh my God, did you see Puka? Oh my God, did you see Nakua? Oh my God, did you see what he just did? I don't think he dropped the ball, and like I said, he ran a bevy of routes. So he showed his versatility, full route tree. Again, good, like just like Dylan said, I thought he was real crisp, good hands. I didn't really see, and I'm not disregarding what Dylan said, but I don't know. I question if he's got that top end, blow the top off the defense speed.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that, and listen, maybe it's just, it could be, like I said, I haven't really watched a ton of his film. So I think he does, at least what I saw, he does a lot of his good work, in the middle of the field, those digs and those ins and those crossers and stuff like that. You get the ball in his hands and he produces. So.
Yeah, well, sounds good to me. I like guys, possession receivers, guys in the middle of the field make plays like that. We got Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore to blow the roof off the top of the defenses anyway. So
yeah,
we have that covered. So
yeah.
It's good to mix it up. It sounds like if they pick them in, hopefully fourth over third, because I'm greedy and I want somebody in the third round and get them in the fourth round. But now I would take that from everything you guys said. I would take that for sure.
Yeah. And our number 9, Dylan and I both have the same player here.
Oh, cool.
Which was interesting. So, yeah.
Okay.
Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State, 6'3", 210. He had a great year last year. 107 receptions for over 1,100 yards. And you know what? I don't know how many touchdowns he scored. I guess I can look it up, but I'm not going to bother. But he definitely 6. There you go. Thank you. But he's a big target. He's got the body. He checks off all the boxes in the height, weight measurables. I think he can play the boundary. I think he's a true X. Long arms, strong hands, wins off a press. He can do it both with speed releases and with power. Good body control. He's excellent in contested catch situation. He tracks it from both shoulders, tracks a deep ball well from both shoulders. And I think he's a real red zone threat. Iowa State used him that way. He's got that size. He's got that 50-50 ball conversion rate, which just makes him a weapon. On top of that, he's also a really, really effective and engaged blocker. Again, both on the perimeter and stalking downfield, which I think bodes well for what we're looking for the Jets. Again, not to say that all these guys are on the board for the Jets, but he would fit the mold of that. Where he's deficient. Like, again, this is going to be a common thread of the guys I talk about. His route, he doesn't run a full route tree. So he was never asked to in college. He lacks that burst in and out of his cuts. He's not a burner. He's going to be another guy who's in the mid 4.5s. So, in defenses kind of really, really hovered and cut him off underneath, and because they weren't afraid of him, beating him vertically. So they kind of took away a lot of the underneath stuff. And like I said, he lacks that burst that some of the other receivers in this class have, in and out of his cuts, so, he might struggle a little bit to gain separation, but all in all, I think he's a really, really good quality prospect. Like I said, I think he can find a home at the X, but he's versatile enough. If he played the field side on Z or something like that, he's versatile enough to do it. I think he's a 3rd round pick. I have him in my top 90.
Same, yeah.
I think for sure he's a 3rd round pick. I kind of comp his game very similar to Adam Thielen in Minnesota. A younger Adam Thielen. A lot of the same measurables, and that's an easy comp, but just their play style, the way they play strong hands. Like I said, that does good in traffic and in the mud. I think Xavier Hutchinson's a really up and coming nice prospect. I think he's going to make an NFL team real happy.
Yeah, he certainly was one that was hard to keep off of my top 10 list. Speaking just about his usage, PFF has him These are his percentages of wide reps, so on the boundary, not in the slot. 2020, 82.3%, 2021, 79.4%, and 2022, 73%. So, yeah, you're looking at a boundary guy primarily. Yes, he can give you some things in the slot, but I think if you want him to do what he's best at, put him outside and let him win those one-on-ones. You mentioned it, the contested catches. The first line in my notes about him is elite tracking on deep passes, switching shoulders, and maintaining concentration. Not all are catches, but still good technique. Good overall concentration at the catch point. He had a tip pass he completed, a defender tipped it in front of him, and he still maintained the concentration enough to catch it. I thought that was great. Displays good release against press. I noted the Texas game with contested catchability. He did a lot of vertical stems that in breaking route where he was able to just get that late bit of separation and still make the catch with arms all around him. A good catch radius with multiple extension catches outside of his frame. So I felt like he was a really good, at the point of attack, at the catch point player. It's just where else does he excel after that? But I think that wins in the NFL. So you got a spot in my top 10. He did have a good week in Mobile, not the best week. He wasn't showing out or anything, but he did enough to not hurt his stock. And I think that's really what the Senior Bowl is all about, meeting teams, helping your stock in a off the field way, and just not being a detriment to your stock on field. So he did a really good job, and I think 9 is a safe spot for him.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome.
Wholeheartedly. So, I mean, and listen, he could be the replacement if Corey Davis was gone. You know what I mean?
100%.
I think he would fit the bill on what our offense, he could slide in schematically and really make a difference on the Jets. Listen,
year one?
Yeah, I absolutely think he can produce year one. Listen,
probably.
is he going to put off Garrett Wilson, 85 catches, 1,100 yards? No. But not many receivers coming in year one are going to put off those numbers. They're different types. It's apples and oranges when you're comparing the two between Hutchinson and Garrett Wilson. So,
and is and you guys said third round?
Yeah, I got him in the
third round easy.
So you take him in the third round. You don't have to hit the panic button, or it's not the end of the world if Mims competes with him for the job and Mims edges him out because he's in his fourth year. You're not panicking and saying we made a mistake. You're just saying, hey, that's okay, because he could still be a guy that maybe it's going to be, wide receiver 4 or 5, but then eventually move up the chart, in years to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was completely wrong about Jeremy Ruckert's usage, and I thought that by the end of the year he would be tight end 2. But I think if that was the similar plan with Hutchinson, if Corey Davis walks and you have him and Mims, maybe Mims does win it out the gates, but Xavier Hutchinson has the ability to pass somebody like a Denzel Mims, in my opinion, at the end of year one.
Right.
Agreed.
Right.
Totally.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, I'm expecting that. I mean, I think they have, it's funny you brought up Jeremy Rucker because I was thinking the same kind of situation. I feel like they have to make room for Ruckert somehow next year. Like after he played that last game, the way he was blocking, you can't waste his rookie contract. There's got to be a way to get this kid involved because he looks like he can blossom into a special player. I know a lot of people just go by reception yards and receptions and things like that. You got to look at the tape and watch him as a blocker, and that's where you could really, bring incredible value to the team that might not be as appreciated as receptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll go on to number 8. What do you say?
Number 8. Let's do it.
I'll start first.
Okay.
We differ on our number 8 picks here, so I'll start first with one of the guys that Dylan talked about as his honorable mention, and that's Tank Dell. It's hard for me not to put Tank in this top 10. He's 5'9", 160 pounds, and I know that is going to just scare a lot of people off. But last season, he had 109 receptions for just under 1,400 yards and 17 touchdowns. The past 2 years, 2,700 yards receiving with 30 combined touchdowns. He's produced. He produces. Now, Houston's offense is a little bit, spread wide, very, very wide receiver friendly. That might play into it too. But he even produced at the junior college level. He was a standout for Independence Community College. He actually played with JJ when he was there. When they were both, in junior college. The guy, you can't knock the production You know, his quarterback had the highest QBR when he was targeted, the highest in the nation. The guy is just a playmaker. You know, he's like that quarterback's best friend, a guy you just get the ball in his hands, you let him do the rest. He's got, you know, he's fast. He's going to be a low 4.4 guy. So he's got that extra gear. On top of that, crisp route runner, elite agility, that change of direction that you expect to see in someone who's 5'9", 160 pounds. He's got that. And on top of that, probably the best part of his game is what he can offer in specials. You know, he's going to excel and he's going to make a difference returning punts and kicks in the NFL without a doubt. I think that's really going to be his strongest probably attribute that he offers early on, you know, with the upside still to be a very, very good receiver in offense. Now, again, the size is going to flag him right off the bat. There's some teams that aren't going to even consider a guy who's 5'9", 160 with a slight frame. He doesn't even have that frame that can probably put on a lot of mass or get, you know, bigger or stronger. You know, on top of it, like I said, like we talked about, he's the epitome of, you know, positional limitation. Like he's a slot receiver and a slot only. So that's not going to fit a lot of offenses. It's not going to, you know, he's going to work best in an offensive scheme that spreads it out where he can be one of 4 wide receivers on the field, you know, and overcome, play the mismatches, get the ball in his hands and let him do the rest. You know, he struggles against, you know, first day and a half of practices at Mobile, he was lights out. Then the cornerbacks kind of pressed him up and got physical with him, and Tank Dell kind of shut down. You know, he wasn't bad, but you know, right. they figured out what to do with him. You get your hands on him early and don't let him juke you out of the box, you know? So I have him as a top 75 player. I think he's easily going to be a second round pick, you know, second, early third at worst. You know, there's teams that look for those kind of athletes. He's that special type of athlete. Now, his NFL comp, you know, listen, I could have thought about Tavon Austin or Tutu Atwell, like you talked about. I actually comped him to Devin Hester because I think that's the kind of effect that he's going to have on the NFL field. Wow. He's going to be special in the special teams at first, but still reliable enough on the offense because, you know, people remember Devin Hester as a kick returner and a punt returner, but they don't they don't remember that he was a very viable, you know, fourth or extra receiver when asked to do it, you know? So I think that could be Tank Dell's kind of ceiling is elite Pro Bowl level special team production and somebody in the right offensive scheme who you get the ball in his hands in space and just let him do work outside of that.
Well, if we ended up, you know, parting ways with Berrios, it sounds like a guy that would fill in very nicely for the roster.
Yeah, certainly is definitely the Braxton Berrios replacement. Somebody put in the chat there, it's going away, I believe, E-Boogie. Trey Tucker, yes or no? And it kind of just, while you were talking, I was like, well, if I'm going to take Tank Dell in the second round, what if I could just get a Trey Tucker or a Trey Turner? Wink, wink. If we could get a Trey Tucker in like round 4 or 5, like that value would be similar for the type of player you're going to get, at least out the gates, if you're looking for primarily special teams before he can get on the field in those 3 to 4 wide receiver sets. But yeah, he's definitely a gadget player that when the ball is in his hands, he's certainly explosive. I don't think he has a history of injuries, so he's durable for his size. I know that's always an issue with the smaller body guys, but if he can hold up at the NFL level, I see no reason why he shouldn't be. He'll be one of those guys I'm scratching my head at, like, why didn't I have him in my top 10 when I look back? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And the Trey Turner reference that Dylan's talking about, I had a chance to really spend some time with Trey Tucker. In an interview, I had baseball on the brain, and I called him Trey Turner, so. But I think Tucker is a little bit different than Dell because I think Tucker could survive outside. I think even though he's smaller, he's built differently. You know, he's not Trey Tucker might be small in size. You know, he's only 5'10", 5'11", maybe, but he is built solid. Like he is as solid as they come. Tank Dell's a little bit on the frail side when you look at him, but he doesn't pass that eye test. Trey Tucker does.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right.
Who's
My
your number 8?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
still maintaining with the Senior Bowl guys. This is somebody who had first round buzz going into the Senior Bowl, and unfortunately, I think that's kind of tailed off a little bit. I have him as a third round grade. Now, like we mentioned, that doesn't mean he will go in the third round. He could end up going in the second round based on how many grades each team has. But that's Rashee Rice from SMU. He was talked about as a late first round guy, to like a Buffalo or a Kansas City at the back end of round 1, and now I don't really see him popping up much in the top 50. Some some mock draft simulators have him going in the top 50, but I don't necessarily see it with him fully, especially after his week in Mobile. 61.5% catch percentage in his final year. 44% of his yards came after the catch. He did have 9 drops, but that was on 156 targets. So a large sample size where 9 drops really isn't that much of a big deal. Over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. Although one of the games I watched was against a school called Lamar, and it was like men against boys. It wasn't even fair. Rashee Rice knew he was getting the ball. All 22 people on the field and everybody in the crowd knew he was getting the ball, and he could still go up and get it, and it wasn't a problem for him. I think he struggled a little bit at the Senior Bowl, but I wrote in my notes, he was great on tape in college. Had a tough time separating at the line of scrimmage, but his contested catches were fun. I think he has okay ball skills and hands, including 2 one-handed catches that both he came down out of bounds. They didn't count, neither one of them, but they were still fun to watch. And like I said, top 50 buzz, that's probably sliding, but still somebody that's worth that top 10 ranking for me because, like I said, it takes one team with Tank Dell. It's going to take one team with Rashee Rice to fall in love with that 1 or 2 things he does really well. And I think his contested catches are fun enough where NFL teams will covet that as a 50-50 jump ball getter. So Rashee Rice for number 8 for me. It was weird, though, his usage in college. He played 93% of the time in the slot in 2021. And I was like, okay, I feel like his 2021 tape I didn't watch too much of, but he did okay in the slot. And then they moved him outside. He played 81% out wide in 2022. So a complete flip-flop from the year prior. And I feel like if they want to put him back in the slot more, he could win better that way. Maybe not having to play press man on the boundary so much, get him those free releases, switch releases, like with other wide receivers we will talk about coming up soon. And I think that would be the best way for Rashee Rice to win, is to get him in space more than having to win one-on-one, although his contested catches are fun.
Yeah, and that's the big knock that I took from Rice. He was a guy I was so excited to watch in Mobile.
Me too.
But that the big note that I have down for him is that he didn't win 1 rep versus press man. He just couldn't get off the line against those defensive backs. And he looked a little like he looked a little slow and a little muddy coming off the line, but he just, the defensive back, I mean, and I watched probably 10, 15 reps because I was parked right on the field on Tuesday. They let you on the field. So I was parked right on the field, literally 2 arms length away from the DBs and the wide receivers when they were doing those release drills. And it just looked like his feet were in quicksand. He just he wasn't physical enough to get to win on physicality, and he just didn't have the movement to get off, using speed and agility. So, listen, he probably hadn't played football in who knows how long, so maybe that's something that, I don't want to, put all my, put everything I got into the fact that he can't release based on what I saw in like 15 reps on a Tuesday practice in Mobile, but it was definitely a question mark and definitely something that made me say, But I agree with you. Like he definitely had a couple fun acrobatic catches. None of them were in bounds, but he went up. Yeah, he went up for one. I remember on the sideline because I was literally right there, and it was kind of like Odell's catch, when he went over his head and he reeled it in, but he was way out of bounds at time. So.
Yeah, and like some guys comment down here on the bottom, which I happen to miss. What do you guys think of his blocking? I mean, on my dopey blogger scale of 1 through 10, picking a couple of traits that best describe each position, I put his run blocking at a 7 out of 10, which for me is like a low 3rd round grade. I feel like the games I watched for him were Lamar, UCF, and Houston. So the level of competition is not great. You're going against guys that probably aren't going to be playing football at any next level unless it's like XFL. So I felt like his run blocking was okay for the competition, but I feel like at the next level, he's really going to have to put a lot of time and effort into the run blocking aspect if he wants to boost his stock.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fair. So 7, I think we have differently, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll go first.
Yeah, this is where we start getting a little tweaked because I know I have a guy I fell in love with up top.
So I got Keishawn Butte. Keishawn he's a 20-year-old receiver, third-year player at 20 years old. He broke out early on in college. He went to LSU, 6 foot, 190 pounds, broke out early, was a real star rising. In 2022 stats the numbers don't reflect that. He had 48 receptions, 538 yards, and 2 TDs. But I don't think it was all necessarily his fault. I mean, if anyone watched SEC football last year, the LSU quarterback situation was just a dumpster fire. It made injured Mike White and bad Zach Wilson look like, Joe Montana and Dan Marino. So I think their whole offense really struggled. But what I like about Butte is that he's just got big playability. Like, he's one of those guys who has a chance to score every time he touches the ball. He's good yards after the catch, and he's got, really, really, high-end speed. He can be that vertical threat, on the outside. He's a twitchy athlete, so he runs really, really good routes. He also has experience and has shown on tape in LSU against, SEC defenses, which is, the cream of the crop, that he can show that he, owns a full route tree. He's crisp in his cuts. He separates with both speed and strength at the stems of his routes. And he's versatile. Like I said, I think he can line up anywhere. He can play. He can be an X. He can be on the field side or as a flanker in the Z, and even line up square in the slot. He's a matchup nightmare. He's a guy, like I said, he's a big play waiting to happen. So he does have an injury history. He only played 6 games in 2021. Something. It was a leg injury. I don't recall exactly what it was, but it made him miss half the season. And he was also his freshman and sophomore year before he got hurt. He was also a punt returner, but that stopped once he came back. He didn't return. He came off the specials last year. On top of that, we talked about high character guys before and Michael Wilson. And not so much Keishawn Butte. He's got some, he was originally supposed to go back for his senior year in college. Like, he claimed he was going to go back, and all of a sudden he flipped that commitment and designated himself for the draft again. He got caught up in some, crazy chaos with some female staffers on the LSU football team. So that just really throws up a question mark. And I think that alone is probably going to hurt him more than anything. On top of it, what I saw on tape is he seems to drop the easy ones. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So drops were definitely an issue. I mean, he had a 65% catch rate, which isn't terrible. But he needs to improve. He loses concentrations on those easy ones. I specifically remember. I remember a play. I think it was Florida actually, where he was on the outside. He was field side in the flanker, and he just ran a simple slant. And there literally was no one within 10 yards around him, and all he had to do was catch it, and he was gone. You know what I mean? But like I said, it's those kind of concentration things where he looks up and starts running before he secures the ball, so on and so forth. And that's something that, listen, you can't be an NFL receiver. You can't be a relied upon NFL receiver if you're going to have those concentration mishaps and those easy drops. I think, like I said, I think he's a top 75 player. He's going to be a second round, third round pick, so on and so forth. I really like his game, and I think his game is very, very similar to another LSU wide receiver, Odell Beckham. A lot of the same traits, a lot of the same skill sets. Both very, very fast, both twitchy, can line up anywhere, and are true mismatch nightmares.
Wow.
Yeah, Keishawn Butte is one that he's actually one of the first guys that I didn't get to watch before I started ranking my top 10. So I'm excited to get to dive in more on him. I think the combine is going to be huge for him when he gets to talk to teams one-on-one and really hash out what happened at the end of his LSU career. The allegations that are against him that kind of drove him out of LSU are very concerning if they are real. the alleged sex parties in Atlanta, whatever the hell that means. I feel like he got caught up in a lot of shit. Excuse me, I'm sorry if I can't curse on this pod. He got caught up in a lot of stuff at the end of LSU that really, could hamper his draft stock. And on the field, though, like you said, outside the concentration drops, I feel like he was such a dynamic player. Brian Kelly had a weird rift with him. It felt like they were fighting each other all year, and he couldn't just get on the field and do what he needed to do to boost his stock. But if you go back to 2021, he looked like a great player. So I'm excited to learn more about him. I think after the combine and we see his ranking by the experts, settle in a little bit more. He was a first round buzz guy preseason. Now he's kind of tailing off into that second, third, fourth round tier, depending on how teams view him. And the everything at combine is going to be huge for him, but somebody that I'm excited to watch more about.
Yeah. And like I said, I like the idea of his athletic profile on top of it only being 20 years old. They talk about like that college dominator rating a lot.
It's huge
for some of these, and he's, right up there at the top of all these incoming classes. Like, the guy's a player, you do things on the football field at the level he does them at such a young age, sky's the limit. If he can wrap everything else between, wrapping his head, getting his head right and showing that he's past that injury thing. Like I said, he's another guy that I think is going, he has a chance to be a much better pro than he was in college. And I don't think he was that bad.
It's so funny you said that because I would love to see a scenario where he and Michael Wilson get drafted to the same team. They become roommates, and Michael Wilson really gets this guy back into the playbook more and whatever he needs to do to get his head on straight. I feel like that would be like a perfect buddy for him in the league because they're just kind of polar opposites in terms of what we hear about them from an intangible standpoint. So that would be cool.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. My number 7, I believe, is on your list, and it does start a lengthy run of slot only guys for me. Zay Flowers, Boston College, obviously a smaller guy, trying to pull up his measurables. 5'9", 182 he measured in at the Shrine Bowl. He was not at Senior Bowl. He was at Shrine Bowl. Let's see, 85% of his snaps out wide in 2019. So he's a 4-year starter. 85% out wide in 19, 53% out wide in 2020. 76% in 21 and 64% in 22. So despite his size, they used him on the boundary primarily in Boston College. I think that'll be a change of scenery for him at the NFL level. I think he finds success in both places at the college level. Obviously, I think that will change. Smooth, nuanced route runner. His rounded outs and his whip routes are very clean. The head fakes he gives at the top of his routes are super nuanced. It shows that he's a 4-year college player because of how much he puts into his technique and everything like that. Athletic and showed off his sizable catch radius for his size. Like I said, 5'9", but he does have just under 73-inch wingspan, which is pretty big for a 5'9" wide receiver. My negatives, obviously, small frame. That's going to be a consistent issue with a lot of these guys. Can they stay durable? Can they be 3-down players at the next level? I believe he can be more than a gadget player, and I think teams are certainly going to look at him as more than a gadget player. He's getting a ton of first-round buzz. I just have a hard time putting him in the first-round category for me. I have him as a mid-second round, possibly high second round. You look at him at the 43rd overall pick, and then you make it work. But again, you have a smaller receiver added to a small receiving room, which makes it tough. So Zay Flowers is somebody that I think is going to get a lot of love at the NFL level. I just don't know if it's going to be with the Jets or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel the same way. I think the buzz around Zay Flowers is real, and I'm just not on board with it. I don't know. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, you hit everything on the head. Like, the guy is a jitterbug, super twitchy, elite speed, quickness, acceleration, in and out of routes. And he produced when in college, when he was there, he put up good numbers, and he's another guy. You get the ball out and, he gets the ball out in space, and, he can do wonders for it. But, 25 drops through his college career, 12% drop rate through his college career, small hands, 8-inch hands. Maybe that has something to do with it. I mean, he played in the Northeast, so the cold shouldn't come into it, but I don't know. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's just not anyone who really moved the needle all that much. Like, I have him at number 60, so I barely have a second round grade on him, That's where I have. But I'm not going to talk about Zay Flowers in depth because he's my number 6. He's
Okay.
your number 7. So I think you hit that. Like I said, I don't have much more to add. Like I said, he's going to have limitations, small catch radius, small hands. He's not that big at, what is he, 5'10"? 5'10", about 175,
5'9", yep.
yeah, 175, 180 pounds. So he's going to be limited. He's probably the opposite of like Michael Wilson and Keyshawn Butte, where he's probably a better college receiver than he'll ever make out in the pros. If I had to,
it just doesn't seem like he would be like. It seems like we have Elijah Moore, and it doesn't. What you're describing doesn't sound like a guy who's going to be better than Elijah Moore.
Yeah, listen, a lot of these guys moving up the rest of the list are probably not guys that I think would hone the Jets necessarily. Probably are going to be good schematic fits for the Jets outside of maybe Quentin Johnson, who we'll talk about. But the rest of the guys are, it seemed that we would be replicating guys we already have on the roster. Zay Flowers is one of them. I think Zay Flowers is much more shiftier and much more agile and twitchy than Elijah Moore. He might not be as precise and in depth of a route runner, meaning the full tree and what he can do with the stem, at the top of the stem, so on and so forth. Elijah Moore might be a little bit more skilled than that. But all in all, like, Flowers is I think going to be slot only. I know he played outside in college, and I know the numbers showed he can. But I can't see it. I just don't. I haven't seen it on any film that I saw.
Nope, I agree, and I think it's super underrated how good Elijah Moore's route running was when he came out of the draft. I feel like Robert Saleh hits the nail on the head every time. He's an old soul. Like, it's obvious. He's been around the block. He's been with the best, and he's head and shoulders above where Zay Flowers is. But that's the type of athletic profile of Zay Flowers that you're going to get as a redundant Elijah Moore mini clone, essentially.
Yeah. So, so since Zay Flowers was my 6, I'll go into my 5.
Perfect.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just there's a question on the screen. I don't know if you guys know the answer.
Oh, the cutoff date for the draft was back in January. That was months ago.
Happened.
It was weeks ago at least. Yeah, they had a 72-hour window to change their opinion, but I think it was like January 8th or something they had to declare, and then the 10th or 11th they could change back, and that's what Butte did.
Yeah. Okay, so Dom, you'll give your 5, and then we'll have Dylan give his 6 and 5 after you give your 5.
Well, I think my 5 is his 6, so that's why I'm saying.
All right,
so ping-ponging for a little bit here.
Yeah, we're going to go back and forth for a little bit. Yep. So my 5 and Dylan's 6, Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver out of Tennessee.
I know that name.
Big name. Everyone loves him. 6 foot, 180 pounds. 67 receptions last year for over 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns. Now, we talk about speed. This guy's got a track background. This guy, he's going to push sub 4.3. We're talking, record-setting speed. He's gonna push the envelope for maybe one of the fastest 40s ever run. He blows the door off of defensive backs. Probably one of the and I don't have the stat in front of me, and I'm sure we could look it up, but he probably saw the most double teams, high-low, blanketed coverage of any wide receiver in this class, because no one can just hang with, no one can hang with that level of speed. On top of that, at 6 feet tall, he's got good length. He's got long, lanky arms. He's got really big, soft hands. He's a hands catcher, which I love out of receivers. Yes. So he can go and just snatch it and not lose a step or not have to jump and catch it in his body. He adjusts well with the ball in the air. He's got good body control. He adjusts well shoulder to shoulder, catches well in traffic. Again, somebody that fast with a track background, they're going to be explosive, and that's what the guy's in and out of his breaks at an elite level. He's got ridiculous good yak ability, and there's not much that he can't do on the football field. The problems that I have with Jalen Hyatt, why I can't get him up a little higher is, I tend to hesitate or tend to question the guys who only do it for 1 year, right? And
Yeah.
that's exactly what he is. He's a one-year
Mhm.
wonder. He blew up in 22, but before it was its only real level of production in college. On top of that, like I said, anyone who watched Tennessee knew their offense was wide open, so they set up mismatches better than anyone in the entire SEC. He was never asked to handle a full route tree. He's never worked off option routes off the top of the stem. He's been told to just do this and go. On top of it, he's also got limited experience facing press man. Like I can't say that I think it's a problem or a negative, but I just don't know if he's seen it enough. Like I said, the Tennessee offensive system was so in depth and wide open. Like they moved pieces around and they had so many different viable sets and looks out there that they were always lining him up. They'd look to free him up, and again towards the end of the year, the defense is kind of honed in, and they'd bracket him high low all the time, and he still beat it. Like I said, he's got ridiculous agility. I don't know how his true technical play as a wide receiver is going to translate into the NFL. And on top of it, his build. At 6 feet, 175, 180 pounds, it's not terrible, but he's slender. I definitely think he could use some play strength to really develop at the next level. And that might take, adding on a couple pounds. So, I have him as a top 40 player. I actually have him exactly at 40 in my in my overall rankings. If he went in the first round, if he went in the bottom of the first round, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever. Because he's got some of those intangibles that you just can't teach. You know what I mean? He's got Olympic level speed, and he's got the innate ability to just not break out of that speed, not slow down to catch the ball or to break in his routes or so on and so forth. That stuff you can't coach. So if he went in the first round, I wouldn't be surprised. I like him more in the top half of the second round. And, it's hard to comp him to an NFL player. I think the closest that I could probably get is one of Jeremy's favorites from last year, Jameson Williams. You know what I mean? No,
I love Jameson.
Yeah, I know. Tons of speed. Going to beat you. But still has some other intangibles that can really serve well on the football field.
It seems like it would complement Elijah and Garrett Wilson well to have like just a 100%.
Well, I've heard
bullet, like a ricochet rabbit, just blow the top off the defense kind of guy.
I've heard people say that his ceiling is like Will Fuller. Yeah. And if you remember Will Fuller from Houston to Miami, like that's what he did. Will Fuller, ran 9 routes and he ran by guys and the quarterbacks, threw him, got him the ball deep, and he scored tons of touchdowns just beating guys deep on 9 routes. I think Jalen Hyatt might be a little bit more skilled than that. But even if that's, like I said, if he ends up a Will Fuller in the NFL, he's going to have a long career.
Yeah, I agree on almost all those points. And I did mean to mention when I started with Zay Flowers that from Zay moving up, I could see any of these guys that we're going to talk about going in the first round. I don't necessarily view them as first round guys, but if they go in the first round, I'm not going to be completely shocked. And in fact, I would actually condone that a lot more of these guys go in the first round so that John Michael Schmitz follows us at 43, but we can get to that later. Jalen Hyatt, yes, you talked about it a lot. The first thing I wrote down, elite speed, downfield threat is absolutely real. Route running polish and release are totally in question. Tennessee did such a great job of scheming him up, and he would just motion inside to the slot in like a little stack as the back wide receiver, so he's never facing any type of press. You have the first wide receiver go, then he comes out on a split release, whether it's a go route, a post route, a wheel route, something downfield, and it didn't matter whether they had 1 guy, 2 guys on him. The miscommunications that the Tennessee offense did to the defenses they played last year was so beneficial to Jalen Hyatt. Nobody scores 5 touchdowns against Alabama. Like, that's just so unheard of. But you go back and that was one of the games that I took notes on. And outside of his touchdown passes against Alabama, I really didn't have much takeaway from that. I'm like, yeah, they schemed him open. He got past the defense, and Hendon Hooker hit him when he needed to hit him. So it was like a combination of all the perfect things falling into place for Jalen Hyatt. So certainly one of the hardest players to rank on my top 10. I couldn't leave him off. There's just no way with his speed and his ability. But I certainly think he is the one on this list for me that scheme and fit is going to be essential at the next level. You can't ask him to come in and be your wide receiver one out the gates. He's not going to be the Garrett Wilsons or the Chris Olaves of the world that come in and just shine right away. He needs another wide receiver to go along with him. Like maybe like a Vegas situation where he is the opposite Devontae Adams and somebody to take the pressure off him and he doesn't get all the looks. So Jalen Hyatt to me is somebody that I'm really intrigued about at the next level. He played 96% of the slot reps in 2021 and then 85 in 22. And like you said, he was a very small used player in 2021, 320 reps, bumped up to 733 reps in 2022. So he saw double the playing time. So yeah, I'm kind of worried about 1-year starter and the scheme specificity with Jalen Hyatt, but his ability is unmatched. And it's hard to leave him off any list. And fringe top 5 for me at number 6 is a good spot for him.
Yeah. So if we traded back, right, that first pick, I'm giving you a scenario. You tell me if you're excited if this happens. Okay. We trade back. We get a first round next year and another second round pick. We end up with Anton, right, at a tackle. We end up with Jalen Hyatt, and we end up with Schmitz with our real second round pick. If those were the first 3 guys, Anton Harris, Jalen Hyatt, and Schmitz, etc., are you happy?
I would be happy, but I would replace Harrison with DeJuan Jones in the first round trade back.
DeJuan Jones. Yeah, I like DeJuan Jones better. Yeah.
But Anton Harrison is somebody I don't think is getting enough love. I've yet to fully dive in on him, but he's somebody that I'm very intrigued about. So, yeah, I would definitely like that situation of tackle, Jalen Hyatt, John Michael Schmidt. 100% sign me up for that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Tackle. Like
that's
maybe
fine.
Even Broderick Thomas slips back there. Like we just get one of those 4 or 5 tackles that we're all falling in love with.
100%. Yeah, I'm on board for that. Yep.
Listen, I don't think you'd be unhappy about that. I got to be honest with you. And the slander on Anton Harrison, you guys. You gotta watch more, man. He's legit. But
and Wanya Morris, I feel like is just so under the radar as a tackle prospect. I like the way he moves.
It was funny. I was talking to somebody about that yesterday, and not to veer off too far off topic here on tackles, but I got more and more into Anton Harrison film, which I loved, but I'm not gonna lie, like I was just as equally as intrigued looking at the right tackle in Wanya Morris. Like, wow, he's pretty good. On top of that, but I digress. We're in wide receivers now. Listen, Jalen Hyatt, if we went tackle, wide receiver, and then center or whatever other position, I just, I'm not going to say I'd be unhappy with Jalen Hyatt, but I think that there's a lower floor than what's expected. Like he might just turn into a one-trick pony. And listen, that one trick might be very, very good. Again, if his floor is somewhere around Will Fuller, he's going to have a long career, and he's going to put up, he's going to score a bunch of touchdowns. But, you knew what Will Fuller was when he was on the field, right?
Yeah,
I think he's a little bit better than that, which is why I kind of lean more towards Jameson Williams because I think Jameson Williams could do more in the rest of the field. Will Fuller was just a go guy. You know what I mean? Anthony Schwartz, if you guys remember, the Cleveland wide receiver they took in the 3rd round a couple years ago. Same thing, like Olympic level speed, not much else, like looked like, ran like Tarzan, but played like Jane, that could be Jalen Hyatt.
Right.
Yeah. So. And the 2 guys you mentioned when you're talking about comps, Will Fuller, and now I'm already blanking on the other one. But they had injury histories. They had injury histories that derailed what they do best, and that's speed. Yeah, Jameson Williams. Thank you. So they take one soft tissue injury to a leg, like an ACL, MCL, and that could be that one-trick pony, in the stable for a year. So it's really tough to find that balance of what he does well and what can translate well to the next level outside of that one trick. So
yeah. So maybe, listen, maybe we'd be happier if that same scenario I said before ended up being one of the other top 4 or 5 receivers you guys have on the list, maybe one of your top 3s ends up with that tackle and with Smits, and you guys will be happier. So,
oh, there's statues of Joe D outside One Jets Drive if that is the case. Yeah.
Okay.
If he gets any of these wide receivers that we're going to talk about from here on out, yeah. Absolutely.
Right, with the center,
with the center, with the
tackle.
offensive tackle. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it could happen because you never know. There might be someone that slips to our spot at 13, and someone in those low 20s, mid 20s might trade a second round pick and a first round next year to get up there.
So I'm looking at, say all things go bad with Baltimore and Lamar Jackson. They're sitting in the 23 hole, which I believe is the 22 spot because of Miami's empty slot. If they want to move up 9 picks for a quarterback, let's say Anthony Richardson is still there at 13, and they could do what the Bears did with the Giants to get Justin Fields. They traded up from 19 to 11 with a future 1 to go get Justin Fields. So if the quarterback is on the board and the team wants him, you will get way more value out of that pick. So yeah, definitely trade down if there's a quarterback needy team looking to come up.
Yeah. So your number 5 and my number 4 are the same. So I'll let you go ahead and take this one.
Cool. My number 5, Josh Downs, North Carolina. I have him as a second round grade. Again, could slip into the first round. It only takes one team. But Josh Downs, again, slot only. That's the run right here, is slot only guys. And I want to get his perfect measurables. I don't think I have them verified, but it has 5'10", 175 on his school website. I honestly think that's probably a little,
generous
on his side, leaning like heavier. I think he's a little smaller, a little more, smaller frame guy. The games that I watched him play aren't against some of the best competition. Obviously, it's the ACC. So I've watched Florida A&M, Pittsburgh, Wake Forest. Clemson was probably his best competition game that I watched. I was impressed by him. He missed 3 games in 2022. I haven't dug into why exactly, but he was a 78% of the time slot player. I don't know exactly if that has a spot with the Jets, but to me, I think what Josh Downs does as a player, I know my co-host on Jet Nation, Glenn Naughton, he's raved about him since going back to the end of the 2021 season. He's been raving about Josh Downs. So when I finally popped on the tape of him this year, hyper productive player. I'm trying to, where is he at? 1,335 yards, 8 touchdowns on 144 targets. This is 2021. So 2022, 116 targets. That's 260 targets in the last 2 years. So this guy was always being fed the ball. Manufactured touches as well were always going his way. I mentioned a hyper-productive player, mover, shaker type, which I feel like is my cup of tea when it comes to the wide receivers. He has a route-running savvy, and he's great at the catch point. 81% catch percentage in 2022. I think that's the highest of any of the guys we're going to talk about. Again, size is a downside, but if you can be an excellent gadget player on a team with established wide receivers, Josh Downs is going to be the guy for you out the gates right away. Don't expect him to be the main guy right away because he's not going to be that. But the second or third guy with a ton of upside, I love Josh Downs in that spot. So super excited to see him. Only had 3 drops this year on 116 targets, so he's reliable. And I think that's what you want out of the wide receivers in this bucket that we're talking about, early second round, possibly first round, if you can slip in there. So Josh Downs for me, probably an easy top 5 selection. And if he holds up, he's going to be dynamic.
Yeah. You're 5. He's my 4. And I kind of side along this, like with Glenn. I think the guy is just absolutely. I think he's absolutely amazing. There's something to be said about a guy who, yes, he's going to be a slot receiver in the pros, but he can still, like, he still battles. He's got a good release. The guy, he just gets open. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about him. He runs great routes. He understands, how to find the soft spots. He understands where to stick and stay when he needs to be, become, Drake May just looks for him all the time. Again, he's going to be a guy that runs 4.3, so he's got elite speed. I don't necessarily think, I think he plays bigger than he shows. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure.
He plays a lot bigger. His play strength could improve. Like, that's where I think he's going to get caught up at the next level. Is he's definitely going to need to build on some, get stronger. But what I like about it is Carolina runs a pro style offense. They're not like, like for instance, we talked about Tank Dell in Houston and Jalen Hyatt in Tennessee, where they're wide open, where they're put in positions, they're schemed in there. Josh Downs wins rep after rep in a pro style offense from the middle of the field. I mean, you talked earlier about, I forgot who it was, but you talked about somebody, being sharp on their whip routes. I challenge you, go watch Josh Downs run in the red zone, run those whip routes, and he gains, 4 or 5 yards of separation time after time after time. Listen, you could have flipped the coin for me. I could have flipped the coin and said, all right, Josh Downs or Hyatt. At 4 and 5. I happen to put Josh Downs at 4 because I think he's more of a complete wide receiver at this point than Jalen Hyatt.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So
yeah, and I think that's what kept Jalen Hyatt down on my list is I view all 4 of the guys ahead of him or all 5 of the guys ahead of him, except for maybe one, as a complete wide receiver at this point. Yes, they might be a slot only, but what they do as a wide receiver is a complete package for the NFL. So that's why I had Josh Downs higher than Jalen Hyatt as well. You talked about play strength. And yes, I do agree he does need to go overall play strength. But when you're talking about just at the catch point, PFF has him ranked as 13 contested catches, completions on 18 passes. So 72.2% contested catch rate, which is well above what it should be for a man of his size. But like you said, he plays bigger than he is. He's a tough SOB. There was one, I didn't really want to bring it up as a negative, but I watched Florida A&M, a team that they should blow out of the water, especially when you look at a quarterback like Drake May throwing him the ball. There were multiple times where he was throwing his hands up and he was very pissed off at Drake May that the pass wasn't high enough or in the right spot or what have you. He didn't look his way. So I wrote down body language concern and I put it on the back burner. That was the first of 4 games I watched of him and I didn't see it again. So I don't think it's an issue, but I get nervous when I see wide receivers that have body language issues because I get scarred by Elijah Moore and the trade request midseason while we're winning and everything like that. So that would have been my only negative on him, and it didn't show up again. So Josh Downs is definitely somebody I'm super happy if the Jets could bring on.
Yeah, he would be an ideal third receiver. He would be an ideal third receiver.
Yep,
like legitimate. So the next 3 guys, Jeremy, me and Dylan line up 3, 2, 1. Perfect.
We got one more. I got my
oh, you got your
crush.
You got.
I got
that's
my
right,
draft crush in between all that. But then yes, our
you're
3,
number
2,
4.
and
You're
1
number
all
4.
line up.
I defer to you. You're number 4.
So this is the one that I know I'm going to be wrong about in terms of where I have him ranked versus the national media, the consensus, if you will. Jayden Reed from Michigan State. He is my guy. I watched him in the summer, probably around July, because I fell in love with Kenneth Walker and I liked him coming out and I liked their offense and I saw that he was popping off in 2021. So I was like, all right, let me stash his name down. Number 1, Jayden Reed. I went back to him in the summertime. And what I liked about him in 2021 was just exemplified it and exponentially better in 2022. My only real concern with him coming into the Senior Bowl was speed, was his overall play speed. Can he do it at the next level effectively? And he was the wide receiver MVP of the position group at Mobile, and that's voted on by the player. So they have the firsthand knowledge. The DBs vote for the wide receiver. So the DBs knew that Jayden Reed was for real. And I think the only clip of mine that went viral from Senior Bowl was the rep that Jayden Reed didn't win. And I know it wasn't because Jayden Reed didn't win it, but the fact that Jayden Reed being so rare to lose a rep to Mekhi Blackman, the USC corner in one-on-ones in the red zone that got so much tread on Twitter. I think the fact that he lost a rep and that was, went viral, I think that's huge because, like I said, MVP of the position, he's a smooth route runner. I mean, one of the first guys I ever studied was Deebo Samuel in depth, and I'm not going to ever compare anybody to Deebo Samuel. I promise that. But the body type, the way they move, I feel like if you just lined him up in the backfield, this is a Deebo Samuel clone in terms of his physicality. And his speed was fine. I didn't see a problem with his speed, but I do think it's not, high-end 4.3 burner. He might be a high 4.4 guy. So just a couple stats on him. He didn't have a ton of production in 2022. 636 yards, 5 touchdowns, 65.5% catch percentage, and 5 drops. So I kind of attribute some of that to their quarterback play. And if anybody in the chat without Google can tell me Michigan State's quarterback, hats off to them, because he suffered from quarterback play being atrocious at Michigan State and at the Senior Bowl. Like, I was never watching the quarterbacks and saying, wow, like those are the guys, but Jayden Reed made them look good. So Jayden Reed was somebody I know I'm going to be wrong about, but if he hits his ceiling, like I think he can be special at the next level.
Yeah, listen, I don't have him in my top 10, and I kind of, and I'm not denying anything that you said. Like, he was a man amongst boys at the Senior Bowl, in terms of what he was doing with his routes, the separation that he was gaining. I mean, he caught everything that went his way. I mean, I literally think him and Trey Palmer showed the best hands out of all the receivers that were there in Mobile. Like I said, the lack of production is a little bit concerning. But I think you hit it on the head. Like, Michigan State offense and quarterback play was subpar at best.
Mm-hmm.
He's good. He's definitely good, and he's definitely worthy of making the list. Like I said, I just struggled on deciding who to take out.
Yes, that's always the problem. Yep.
That's just always the big, and that was probably the only one big difference in my list and Dylan's, is that he had Jayden Reed ranked up here at 4. I didn't have him in my top 10. I could have, but like I said, I kind of swung on or hung on the heels of what I think about the guys like Tank Dell and some of those other guys that I had on there. Michael Wilson.
Yeah. And if somebody wants to just watch one game sample size of Jayden Reed, this is the game in 2022 that really solidified, like, okay, yeah, I don't have really many concerns about him. Though, I have it written down here, Wisconsin game, the overtime versus Wisconsin is the only thing you really need to watch with Jayden Reed. He made the first play, he made a wide receiver reverse pass for a touchdown, like 27 yards on the dime. And then he came back and ran like a wheel route out of the slot motion and caught it, like turning around the opposite way, like a 270-degree body turn, caught it above the DB, got his butt down in the end zone. And I believe that one was for the win. It was the very last play on their offensive cut-up. So I was super impressed with Jayden Reed. I never go off one game sample sizes. I've now watched 7 and the Senior Bowl from him. But if anybody wants to just fall in love with one game, Wisconsin, especially in overtime for Jayden Reed.
He's a guy, Jeremy. He's a guy that could fit the offense for sure.
No, and I think that's part of the reason why I also have him higher on my list, because he fits the mold of what the Jets like. I think they covet his size and route running ability. He's a physical player, like I said, so he's going to be a plus blocker in the run game. He's not a Corey Davis, so that's not the idea. He's not a replacement for Corey Davis, but he can play on the outside if they do want to move Elijah Moore inside. You still need to get bigger at the position. I understand that, but Jayden Reed is certainly somebody that fits the bill of what they look for at the position.
I feel like kind of like Garrett Wilson was the one who replaced Corey Davis. Like, Corey Davis was signed to be a WR1, and now Garrett Wilson just, took the highlight. Like, he took the spot. He stepped up and basically made himself the number 1. And now,
there's a lot of similarities in the play of Jayden Reed and Garrett Wilson. I think a lot of I like the way that they create separation. I think a lot of the yard after the catch stuff is very similar. I mean, I think Garrett Wilson is a little bit more shiftier and probably a little bit
stop
faster.
Start is where they lose me. Garrett Wilson's stop start ability is it's not even, nobody in this class really has it except for some of the top guys that we're going to get into. But yeah, Garrett Wilson and him have a lot of similarities in their game. Yeah.
That's always, that's obviously going to.
You can't have enough Garrett Wilsons on your team.
You can never have too many Garrett Wilsons. I mean, and that's what we were talking about before about intangibles, right? You never know you're going to get that guy that we saw. And I think me and Green Bean lit up when the helmet came off and he kept going. And then the attitude that he had afterwards, the anger, the passion, like when you saw his face with the helmet off. And me and Green Bean were just like, because we're, doing the live reaction party, and we're just looking and going, we got ourselves a man. Like, this is a man.
Yeah.
He's a rookie, but he's a man. Like, he's on that field. He is fearless, unstartled. Like, we knew we were dealing with someone special outside of his athletic ability, the person. Because he didn't come off that way. When we first got him, he looked intelligent, really good character. His dad and his son, like family kid, like everything great we loved about him. But then we saw this fire, this season. So a real fire from this kid. So whenever you tell me anybody is like Garrett Wilson, if like skill, great. But if he also has that fire, oh my God, I can't imagine having a second receiver playing with that kind of fire on the field for us at the same time.
Yeah, and to keep fanning those flames while we're on that topic, he had a red zone rep where they handed the ball to his side. He came down from the boundary to the box area and had to seal block for the running back to cut behind him. And he didn't get a great, positioning and great grab onto his defender, and the defender ended up falling off and getting the tackle. He still got a first down. But Jaden Reed was pissed off. Like, he showed it. He was fired up. He's like, God, like, I missed it, but they still got the first down. It didn't matter, but it mattered to him that he didn't fully perfect that block. And I think that is going to help him at the next level for sure.
Yeah. Love the fire.
Yeah.
So now we get into it, and we have all three lined up. 3, 2, 1.
We got 3, 2, 1. We're lined up exactly the same.
Oh, I'm so excited. I love it. Now, if we get one of these top 3,
yes,
with a trade back situation, get our tackle, get our center, and one of these guys. We've seen JD work this kind of magic, so you never know. We'll be excited. So go ahead.
I have a quick question for you, Dom, before we dive into them.
Shoot.
Are you okay with all 3 of you? Don't have to name the guys specifically yet, but are you okay with all 3 of them at 13th overall? Any of the 3, I should say.
I'd struggle with how number 2 is going to fit in our offensive scheme.
Yes.
I struggle how number 2 is going to fit in our offensive scheme, but I think
I agree.
I'd roll with the talent. Actually 2 and 3 probably I'm like this on. If number 1 was the pick at 13, I think Jets Twitter would absolutely blow up, and I'd stay off it for a while, but I'd be okay. I'd be okay with it.
Yeah, I think at 13, my number 1 guy is the spot. If you trade back, you could take the number 2 guy, and I don't see number 3 being a first round guy. I know there's some buzz for him there, but it's tough for me with numbers 2 and 3. 2 from a scheme perspective, 3 from I don't covet that skill set perspective, and number 1, I mean, I'm literally doing backflips at 13. I don't care. He's my guy. He's number 3 on my big board total, just behind Anderson and Carter. So I love his game. I love his game. Yeah.
Oh,
we won't get into suspension.
We definitely got to get this going.
So number 3, I'll start. I'll talk about number 3 first. And I went back and forth. He was number 2 for a while, and then he's back to 3, so on and so forth. But he's probably number 1 on a lot of boards that you see, and could easily be the first receiver taken off the board. And it's Quentin Johnson from TCU. Quentin Johnson, what the things that I really, really like about him, obviously, he has the prototypical height, weight, speed. He's that kind of player. 6'4", 220 pounds. He's going to run in the 4.3s. He's everything that we have in Denzel Mims, except bigger and stronger. He's a true prototypical X receiver, which I have kind of I lean, a little bit, I lean a little bit more towards those kind of guys as well. Again, he's just strong. He's, for a big guy that fast, he's got excellent skills with the ball in his hands with yards after the catch. Like I said, he offers that mismatch that you're just not going to get in this entire draft class, which is something that I think is, could be very impactful. Like I said, he was ranked really high in Bruce Feldman's freak list. The guy has like a 600, he runs a 4.3 at 6'4", 225 pounds, has squats like 600 and something pounds. He's just a beast, man. He's just really, really, really good. He's a really good.
Who you reminded me of, Dom, when you say 6'4" and runs a 4.3?
Yeah, Denzel.
Not just Denzel from last year's draft that you got me all high on.
6'4".
Who's the player that was big and super fast that you?
Oh, Drake. Yeah, Drake wasn't. Drake wasn't that. I love Drake London.
Not just Drake. The other guy went to Green Bay. Christian Watson.
Christian Watson. Yeah. Senior Bowl guy. Yep.
Yeah. I think he does like it. It's funny. Quentin Johnson's an X. But he doesn't necessarily always play like an X. Like I said, he's got that yard. He's tough to tackle. He's has a good. He's precise in creating, in running his routes and creating separation and so on and so forth. But the crazy thing about Quentin Johnson is that he's like the things that you expect him to just kill it off of, he doesn't. He struggles really hard against press man. You get him off man coverage or defense lines up kind of 3 deep cloud or something like that. He's gonna find the holes and he's gonna get the ball in his hands. He's gonna excel. But he fights too much at the line. He struggles to get off the line, and he's he doesn't play very physical for a big guy, and that's what ended up moving him down to 3, was that the more I watched, I was like, this guy is like the biggest guy on the field, and he plays so soft at times. I just don't get it. Like 50-50 catches right down the tubes. You expect him to win every single one of them. He also drops too many balls. He's and I've heard that a lot, and I've read that a lot from some of the guys that I trust and I rely and I know, is that they think that he just doesn't have the hands to really be elite at the next level. Stonehands Johnson is how one guy I'm close with refers to him. So listen, he's got the skill set. Again, TCU is another one of those crazy offense. He was I lost you. He was the man in a very high-powered TCU offense. He was the force. But it's like, I don't know. There's just too much meat left on the bones. Like I said, he doesn't run a full route tree, but the stuff that he does, he's very good and quick and precise in it. Like I said, he plays like I'm going to use a bad hypothetical here, but he plays more like 5'10", 180-pound Josh Downs in the slot, except he's 6'4", 215 pounds on the outside. Yeah. You know what I mean? So the game, that the skill set that he offers doesn't really match the body. But if he ever does, like he's going to be a ridiculous talent in the NFL. They said the same thing about Justin Jefferson coming out of college. That, he didn't have the skill set to really excel at the next level. And look what he's done. They had Justin Jefferson as a slot only guy, was going to be a ancillary part of the offense, not the dominant part. And I think Quentin Johnson is the same thing. Like he could have, if he puts it all together and matches his play style and figures out how to hold on to the ball and becomes a little bit more physical, not only, in, the route run, with the physicality that's involved with playing man-to-man press coverage, but the physicality blocking on the perimeter, the physicality stalking down blocks, coming down on blocks. If he puts that all together, I mean, he could be, a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Like that's what I really, really, really think. But there's just so many things on there that just don't add up. And shoot.
Just I got a question right away. Like if we traded down to 23, 24, is there any chance realistically that this guy is on the board?
Yes. He might slip out of the first round.
Listen, he could go
12.
He can go as high as 10 or 12. Mm-hmm. He could go as low as the middle of the second round.
So if we took him at 23, 24, obviously we traded down. So we got, let's say, an extra second round pick. And again, we take a tackle, the best that we can, and we take the center, and you get the center that we all love. Are you thrilled and excited? Are you pumped?
Yeah, I think you have to be thrilled and excited and pumped. And it most likely means that Corey Davis is gone because he's going to be that big body replacement that you lean on third downs to get you those tough first down yards. But like Dom said, I think he does have some of the biggest boom bust potential of these top three. And I think that's why he sits at 3 for me. I just feel more comfortable about what the floor of the two guys ahead of him are going to do at the NFL level. I basically wrote that Quentin Johnston is a big power forward build. If you think about a basketball player, big power forward guy, like a Chris Bosh, he's just going to stand there with his back to the hoop, hitch routes. He does a lot of hitch routes, and he'll just hit him with that little shoulder fake. Like, I just picture a basketball player every time I see him. I wrote he's a decent yak guy. The games that I watched, it wasn't a ton of yak that was hard fought. It was more I separated and beat my guy, and I just ran 60 yards with the ball straight. It's not the Deebo Samuel yak or the Jaden Reed type yak where they're running east and west breaking tackles. Still, it's yak, and I think it all counts the same. He does have some excellent stops and cuts for his size, but I do think somebody mentioned in the comments here, I believe it was Harlan, he doesn't run a full route tree. He absolutely does not run a full route tree. No. I don't know if he ever will run a full route tree due to his size.
No, but the stuff that he does, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the stuff he does not run a full route tree, and nobody in TCU has ever come out. A lot of the schools down there, they're just not, they run that wild. That wild style, high octane offense. So he doesn't run it, but the stuff that he runs very well. Like I said, he's the guy, Jeremy, I'll give you a visual. You put him on the outside at 6'4", and you have him run, 4 yards and slant across the middle, and you hope to just hit him across the middle and just watch him go. Like Dylan talked about. He's the guy that you run 10 yards and you stop and have him hitch back to the inside.
Stop at the sticks, pick up that third down,
right.
Keep the chains moving.
Possession style receiver with a really, really high end, high ceiling athletic profile. I don't think the Jets fans would love Quentin Johnson as a whole, because everyone is going to say we already have that in Denzel Mims, and I can't really dissuade that. Like, it's they're kind of the same thing. I think that Quentin Johnson's ceiling athletically is a lot higher than Denzel Mims, but I mean, you're talking almost similar height, similar weight, similar speed, similar skill sets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
you're just hoping that Quentin Johnson can, develop the stuff where he lacks. That he works with somebody and figures out how to get off of press man. Somebody that big and somebody that fast, can't spend all their time yanking wanks, at the line with the defensive back. Like,
exactly. You got to just win and go. Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right. Just
and
win
and
and
I
go.
think a lot of times the things that Denzel Mims lacks at the NFL level are very up to par with what Quentin Johnston lacks at the next level. Everybody's so tired of Denzel Mims jumping for the ball and dropping the catch at, almost every time. Quentin Johnston is of that similar. People are going to have headaches with Quentin Johnston if he isn't exactly what I think fans think he's going to be at the next level. So I have a lot of concerns. He's, again, not the type of wide receiver I covet. I look to a guy on his team, Darius Davis, the slot guy. Those are the mover shaker types. That's what I kind of gravitate towards. But Quentin Johnston, it wouldn't make me mad. I just don't think I would be overly thrilled with him, especially in the first round.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. That's number 3. We both got the same.
You'd rather us trade back to 23, grab Broderick Jones or any of those top tackles that we love, and then with that second round pick we pick up, we get a guy like Quentin Johnson. And
absolutely, that would be preferred. Okay. That would be preferred. Absolutely. And I don't know if I'll kick off number 2.
Go for it.
Because it kind of ties into number 3 for me. Our number 2, Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State. 2022, you basically got to throw the game film out. He played 3 games, had 8 targets for 39 yards. Didn't do anything. He was hurt all year. I believe it was an ankle injury that was nagging him all season long. But when I look at him, specifically after talking about Quentin Johnston, I was listening to the Move the Sticks podcast with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks, one of my favorite draft pods and all around football pods to listen to. And they were talking about their wide receiver rankings earlier in the week. And DJ put it that in his time as, the scout and evaluating these players, he said craftsmen and route runners beat out height, weight, speed guys historically. And I'm not saying every single time 1-for-1, the height, weight, speed guy is going to lose every time. But when I look at guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba versus Quentin Johnston specifically, I could totally see Jackson Smith and Jigba on the short and intermediate routes doing what he needs to do to be an effective offensive rookie of the year type player for a team in the back end of round one. Whereas Quentin Johnston, we had all those concerns about, and he really needs to put it all together in order to be effective right away. So to me, you have to throw out 2022. You go back to 2021 with Jackson Smith and Jigba. He was on a team that already had Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and he still put up 1,595 yards. I mean, that type of production is just ridiculous from your wide receiver 3. And if you there was an interview of all 3 receivers, and they asked who the best one was. Olave and Wilson both pointed at Smith and Jigba. And to be honest, all 3 would probably point at Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out next year. Yeah. So the pipeline of wide receivers with Brian Hartline as the wide receivers coach, now the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. I mean, they just have a pipeline of guys, and Jackson Smith and Jigba is the next one for me that if you loved his 2021 tape, there's really no reason that you should dock him for 2022. I look at it almost like Jamar Chase. He skipped his entire last year and still went top 7 or top 5. And maybe he's not a top 10 player anymore, but if he's gone at 13, maybe to like 12 to the Texans, I wouldn't be surprised. That would never shock me about Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think he is that talented as a slot player. He's a little bit heavier. I believe he's just under 200 pounds, but he's 6 foot. So he doesn't have, prototypical size, but that's why he's a slot guy. And I think he could thrive in the slot and really give the Jets an option. If he was the guy, give him another option to this offense to just have flashy playmakers that are dynamic.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing about JSN that kind of just throws me off. Like I said, you hit on the head. He didn't play. You got to throw 2022 out. It was an ankle or ankle hamstring. I don't know if it was a combination of both, but I think he also was getting. He didn't want to go and kind of step in and play again when he wasn't 100% because he didn't want it to affect his draft. And
stock. It certainly would have.
Yeah. So
nobody gives people credit for gutting it out anymore. I don't. Well,
that's
kind of a lost thing.
That's the thing. Like I hear him. I understand why he did it, but to me, there's something in that just doesn't you're on a team that's going to push for a national championship, and he's just
they were in the playoffs.
Yeah. He just said no. I'm good. I'll see you guys in Indianapolis for the combine. On top of that,
you got to be confident about it. And I feel like if he wasn't getting, these rave reviews of a potential first round pick, I feel like he should or would have gone back and played or tried to gut it out. But I feel like once these guys get the grade that they want of like, hey, 2, 3, 4 teams are looking at you in the first round, you're probably not going to slip past like top 40. They kind of hang it up and they're like, well, what's the point? I'm good. I've done what I needed to do.
Yeah.
So
now he's definitely probably, maybe him or Jordan Addison, but arguably the top 2 route runners in the entire draft class.
Oh yeah, for sure.
For sure. But the thing that's funny about JSN, he's slot only for sure at the next level, but for different reasons. He's just he lacks it. He's mid athletically. He's not explosive. He's not going to be fast. He's gonna test somewhere probably in the high 4.5s, maybe even 4.6.
And people are not going to like that.
Absolutely. So he doesn't have the speed or the chops to win outside. So he's going to be destined for the slot. Now, could he succeed there? Yeah. I'm on Ross St. Brown from Detroit. Same exact profile coming out of college. They said, well, he's going to drop a lot because, he's going to be destined for slot. And you know what? They found his niche. There is a place for the big slot, those big crafty, productive wide receivers in the slot. They don't all have to be jitterbugs. So I think JSN is going to be good like that. Like I said, his route running, his ball skills and his hands are elite. He understands the offense. He's another one of those guys who could be like a quarterback's best friend, where he just
Yes.
sits and finds the open spots in the zone and just you just pepper him there. He's going to be a he can mismatch, or he can juke the heck out of a linebacker or a safety that comes up to block him. But I question if and we're Jets content creators here, so you put Michael Carter II on him, he's not gonna he's not gonna get by Michael Carter II. You know what I mean?
No.
Like guys like that level of slot cornerbacks like that on JSN are going to give him trouble. Yeah. So that's why he's not number one in on my list. Is just that I think that athleticism is average at best. And I like that you said it, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. Olave and Garrett Wilson are the first two guys that will tell you when the three of them played together, JSN was the best on the field, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a tough hurdle to climb coming back from not playing in 2022, being limited athletically, not having that vertical speed to really beat defenders over the top. But the other stuff that he offers will probably outweigh him. He's going to be a first round pick. I love him right in the bottom, that from 21 down. Because there's a ton of teams that need wide receivers. I mean, you're talking the Giants. You're talking Jacksonville could go wide receiver. Baltimore could go wide receiver. Buffalo could go wide receiver. Although I don't think his profile really fits what Buffalo needs.
Right.
There's a ton of teams right around there. And then again, in the top half of the second, Chicago, the Texans, Tennessee.
Yeah. I mean, because they never really replaced their guy, right? That they traded away.
Yeah, they got Treylon Burks to replace AJ Brown, but I don't think that's a 1-for-1. You're not getting AJ Brown productivity out of Treylon Burks. But going back to Jackson Smith and Jigba's athleticism and overall ability, like from that perspective, on my grading system, I put his separation and quickness and speed not as a first round grade. But when you look at his route running, hands, release, and ball skills, that is all first round grade, and it makes him now the overall first round wide receiver that I think he can be. But yes, not everything about him is first round talent. Whereas I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but my number one guy is almost across the board first round talent with almost every aspect you look at of his game.
Yeah, I agree. So we might as well just get into number one. I'm sure I'm sure the chat has figured it out already.
Yeah.
And he's your guy, so I'll let you go off, and then I'll finish.
All right, and I do want to just clarify, he is number 3 on my board. I gave him out of 100. That's my ranking scale. I have 10 traits for wide receiver. Everything is 1 through 10. Very similar to how the Draft Network does their draft rankings. They use 10 traits specific to the position, rank them 1 through 10. It's a little biased, I'll be honest. But I gave Jordan Addison an 89 out of 100. So that is the third highest grade, only a half point lower than Will Anderson. So that just goes to show how I feel about him compared to the top of this class. Jordan Addison, I understand people aren't going to love his height weight. He's only 6 foot and 175 is the measurables that USC has on his website. He does not play like Josh Downs. He does not play like a 6 foot, 175 receiver. He plays like he's probably closer to 6'2", 190. He has the greatest feel for space out of any of the wide receivers. This is a 2021 Biletnikoff winner, which is the best wide receiver in the nation. He won that at Pittsburgh with Kenny Pickett, and then he transferred to USC in 2022 only to just be super productive again, 875 yards and 8 touchdowns on 79 targets. Just under 75% catch percentage. So Josh Downs was 81. I believe he's second on the list at 74.7. Nearly 50% of his yards come after the catch. So that just goes to show how dynamic and explosive he is. This is somebody I watched pre-2021, and I loved his tape, even though I did not like Kenny Pickett coming out of the draft. I felt like Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison were a perfect match for each other, and I feel like everything about that match was heightened with Caleb Williams in USC, and the connection between his quarterback and him is just on par. He's an old soul, kind of like Robert Saleh says about Elijah Moore. I just feel like he's so much more nuanced in every facet of being a wide receiver that you don't even care about his size, and he's going to blaze. He might be a low 4.4, high 4.3 guy when it's all said and done. That's speculation. I have no verification of that. But if all goes right for Jordan Addison and he does run in that range, he might not even be there at 13. So that's the type of player that I'm not running it to the podium at 13 if he's there, but say 3 offensive tackles go and you're deciding between a reach on OT4 or a guy like Jordan Addison. I mean, even over a Brian Branch type of player, who I do have a first round grade on Brian Branch, I would take Jordan Addison over Brian Branch if I'm the Jets right now, because of he improves your team. And it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, Mike White, like any of these guys, Jordan Addison will make them better. So he's the type of guy that you want on your team that's going to boost performance across the board for your offense. So Jordan Addison, I'm in love with. He's my wide receiver 1, hands down.
Yeah, he has the ability to create separation. Based on his technical skill as a wide receiver is hands down the best in this class. He's a combination of Stephon Diggs and Devonta Smith. He looks like Devonta Smith, but I think he's a lot better than Devonta Smith.
I do too.
Technically sound route runner, full route tree, can do everything. I question if he's anything more than a slot at the next level. But he's got the skill set to do it. I mean, Devonta Smith doesn't play in the slot. I think Jordan Addison is better than Devonta Smith, so I got to imagine that he's going to be able to, at some point move outside, at least in the, he doesn't have the build for an X, at least on the field side as a Z or a flank or so on and so forth. But he's got, he like I said, he's just so crisp and technical in his route running that he just creates separation. And I love the fact that he did it not only 1 year, but he did it a second year now at USC. I mean, he did it at Pitt, and that's great.
Two different offenses.
Two completely different offenses, and he still, shied out. Like I said, the guy. Yeah, he can cut on a dime. He can, he does all that stuff. His size is going to, some people aren't going to love a guy, they're alpha male being 6 foot, 170 pounds, but I think he can get past that. I really do. Could he play a little bit more physical or have a little bit more functional strength in his play? Yeah. But I think as he, grows and gets into an NFL weight room, that stuff will come without having to limit the speed and quickness that he offers. And like I said, I just think that he does so good. Like, he understands the position of wide receiver. Like,
so guys, if we were to get him at 13, and I wouldn't even complain after what you're saying, because I'm thinking like Cincinnati's receivers, like I'm thinking like, imagine by then we have a Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers. And then you add this kid with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore.
Yeah.
And imagine Breece Hall gets back week 6, week 7, 8, and starts playing like Breece Hall. And imagine Becton is healthy and able to play. And Mitchell is back, and we draft the guy 2nd round tackle, maybe 3rd round. We get one of those centers we talk about. And our offensive line doesn't have to be dominant as we want it to be, maybe, but good enough. And you have a Rodgers or a Carr with those 3 targets and a Breece Hall. I mean, and our defense, like, we stay in the top 10 at defense, right? Maybe not top 5, maybe top 8, let's say. I mean, I'm starting to think. I mean, that sounds pretty amazing to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen. You think back to Garrett Wilson's senior year at Ohio State, and him being paired up with Chris Olave. Like, either of them can go off at any time. If you paired up Jordan Addison with Garrett Wilson on the Jets, either of them could go off at any time. It's a defensive coordinator's night. It would be a defensive coordinator's nightmare. I really, really believe that. I really, really, really believe that. Like, he's one of the few guys that I wouldn't balk at if we didn't go, if we didn't take tackle. If we sat at 13 and didn't go tackle and they went Jordan Addison, he's one of the few guys that I'd be completely okay with.
Yeah.
Brian Branch is another one. Even though I know schematically he's probably not ideal fit as a as a true single high free safety, but I'll take the athlete that he is. He happens to be a guy that he's in my top 5 overall. I think Brian Branch is a great player, but Brian Branch or Jordan Addison are probably 2 of the guys that don't play offensive tackle that I'd be completely content sitting at 13 and taking.
Because they have major impacts on the team. I mean, like, if you want to know how we would get our defense to go from number 5 or 4, whatever people could argue based on different rankings and everything. If you want to argue how do we get to the level of San Francisco and be battling for be the best defense in the NFL, Brian Branch gives you that opportunity, I think. He's a game-changing guy.
Yeah. And just a short list of the guys at 13. Obviously, you have the 3 tackles, Skoronski, Paris Johnson, Broderick Jones, but there's no real, confirmed scenario where any of them are on the board. So like Dom said, if that is the case and you're not looking at offensive tackle, which they could solidify the position before the draft even happens, I've kind of been on the side of go bring back George Fant on a really small deal because he has no leverage to earn more money. Dwayne Brown might not retire if you go get an Aaron Rodgers because he knows that there's a legitimate window for the Jets to win. Obviously, Mekhi Becton is a great story, and if he comes back, that's great. And then you have Max Mitchell, too. So now you're looking at 3 or 4 options at offensive tackle where it's not necessarily the only need at 13. Jordan Addison would be a player that contends to break the Garrett Wilson records that he just broke this year. 83 catches and 1,101 yards is probably easy for Jordan Addison to do when he has Garrett Wilson across from him, especially with Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers throwing it to him. So I could see those records for Garrett Wilson being very short-lived in Jets history if Jordan Addison was the guy. And you don't say that about many guys in this draft at the wide receiver position.
Yeah. And a lot of people would argue, at the end of the day, we've had good defenses in the past 20, 30 years for a lot of us that have been watching in all those years. It feels like we're never the team that could just score points.
And points would be in bunches with Addison. Yeah, for sure.
It sounds like if we got Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, and then you throw this guy in with Garrett Wilson. I mean,
I think Rodgers would throw for 6,000 yards if you got Jordan Addison. Obviously, maybe 13 goes to Green Bay, and 6,000 is very exaggerated. But this is the world that we would live in. Aaron Rodgers would contend for 50 touchdowns. He's done 48. He's done 47. He's done 45. He could go for 50 with guys like Garrett Wilson, Jordan Addison. People don't realize, Packers have never surrounded this guy with first-round pass catchers at the running back, wide receiver, or tight end position. Now you have 3 from the top 34, 2 from the top 13. One's offensive rookie of the year. The sky would be the absolute limit. So I understand the need for offensive tackle, but sign me up for Jordan Addison 8 days out of the week.
And there is speculation with Aaron Rodgers. There is speculation that based on the contract and based on if that's what he says he wants, that Green Bay might not have the leverage to get a number 1 from us.
Right. And I put out a tweet this morning, and my screen time on Twitter is just way too high today for the first Sunday without football, and I should have stayed off it, but I did mention that. And it's just Aaron Rodgers himself has talked about reworking the deal. Packers have publicly come out and said that the divorce looks imminent. So all these signs lead me to believe that the driving cost for Aaron Rodgers is no longer two first-round picks. That's just silly. Peter King himself walked back those rumors. I think if you could get away with a second or third round pick in this draft class and a first round pick in 2024 or even 2025, I feel like you could extend the draft class picks out that far to 2025 where you're not risking it. If Aaron Rodgers hangs it up after 1 year, you still have 2024's pick. So I feel like there's tons of avenues that Joe Douglas will do this because he's a smart GM. He's not going to go out and throw blank draft picks at him. The time where to throw blank anything at Aaron Rodgers is blank checks coming from Woody Johnson's pocket. And no fan should care how much money Woody Johnson has to pay for Aaron Rodgers because it doesn't affect cap. Guaranteed money comes from the owner. So there's not too many negatives with Aaron Rodgers with me. I get the cap, future cap dead hits if he retires after 1 year. You're hanging the Jets on a lot of money, but he's going to rework his deal regardless. And I think it's just a no-brainer. And now that with Jordan Addison, I'm too hyped.
Yeah, the only caveat for Jordan Addison to the Jets would be that it would be a complete antithesis of the kind of wide receiver that Nathaniel Hackett seems to lean towards or
Yeah.
has leaned towards.
Mhm.
You know, he likes the bigger body guys, you know, in that quick hitting West Coast scheme, gonna run your 3-yard slants and goes and so on and so forth. Addison would be a little bit of listen, I love the guy and I would love to have him on my team. Like I said, I think if you put him and Garrett Wilson on the field, you're remaking the 2020 Ohio State team when you had Olave and Garrett Wilson on the field. But it's kind of reciprocal to what Garrett Wilson already does. You know, they're kind of one and the same.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
schematically.
And I think that's why Corey Davis isn't necessarily a lock to be traded, because Nathaniel Hackett could like that, you know, short area, kind of working in a phone booth, contested catch type of guy. They had Cortland Sutton in Denver. They also had Tim Patrick. I know he got hurt, but you could tell that he definitely, you know, veered away from the KJ Hamlers of the world and was going more toward the bigger, you know, Jerry Jeudy's of the world. So yeah, it's definitely a scheme. It's not going to be a perfect scheme fit. You're banking on his talent and all around traits. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to answer a couple questions in the chat, Jets mess. What's up, my dude? Addison did return punts when he was at Pittsburgh.
Yes.
I don't know if he did it at USC, but I know for sure he was the punt returner at Pittsburgh. And somebody else asked a question about Marvin Harrison Jr. Let me see if I can find it in here.
I'll look up if Jordan Addison did take special teams reps. I believe he did.
I know for a fact he did at Pittsburgh.
At Pitt, yeah, I know he did at Pitt too. I believe he had 40 or 50 kick return reps on PFF, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Here we go.
What was
Jeremy,
the second question about him?
Jeremy. Oh, 11-11. Some guy. Some guy at 11-11.
Okay. That'll do that. Some guy at 11-11. I think I found it. This one?
Yeah. So, Dom and Dylan, since we're talking wide receivers, in your opinion, if Marvin Harrison Jr. was able to come out, would it be a top 5 pick? I think he would.
I think he would be a top 3 wide receiver. I don't know, stacked up to the class, if he'd be a top 5 pick. I don't know the other positions, but yeah, he'd be in that realm of Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle. He's going to contend to be the first wide receiver no matter what off the board.
I think he's the first. I think.
Oh yeah.
I think without question he's the first wide receiver off the board, and you know, again, it depends on in this draft. Or any of those teams in the top 5 really wide receiver needy. I'll say this: if Chicago trades back, like they're a lot of people are assuming they do, and say they trade back to 4, I would see them jumping all over a Marvin Harrison Jr. over the likes of Will Anderson or over the likes of oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? The D tackle from Georgia. I can't think.
Jalen Carter.
Jalen Carter. Thank you. So I could see them doing something like that. Absolutely. Marvin Harrison's really, really freaking good. Really good.
To answer the special teams question about Jordan Addison, he did take 1 kickoff return for in 2022 for USC and 4 punt returns for only 15 yards. So he really didn't do much. He fair caught 11 punt returns. So he was out there for 15 total punt returns, and they have him marked down for 2 muffed punts. I'm not going to say that I don't know what constitutes as a muff under PFF standards. He could have just dropped the ball and picked it back up, but it doesn't seem like he was a ultra productive player from a special teams perspective. But Jaden Reed, my guy, had 2 punt return touchdowns in 2022 or 2021 with a handful of punt return experience in both 2021 and 22. So you want a guy like that in the top 5 that we talked about with special teams upside is certainly Jaden Reed.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, one more question in the chat if you want to highlight at 11-17 from Green Bean.
Okay.
I'll let you highlight.
I don't want to answer it. I'm not answering the question.
There you go.
Let's read his voice. Why does Dylan hate Derek Carr so much, man?
So I'm going to preface the entire thing by saying Derek Carr is my 1B option this year if Lamar Jackson's not available. Obviously, we reorganize the entire list if Lamar's available. He's 1B behind Aaron Rodgers. But, there he is.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
The gap between my 1A and my 1B is probably 1,000 times larger than even I let on Twitter. I am not the second the Raiders benched Derek Carr and Jets fans started talking, I was like, I can't do it. I can't. Just put me in a hyperbolic chamber until free agency because this is going to be a nightmare. And you know what? It's cool. I understand all the talk about him being the franchise's best quarterback since Joe Namath. This entire 4-box would be the best quarterback since Joe Namath, by the way. So that argument gets a little lost on me with Derek Carr. My issues with him are in the pocket. When he's in the pocket and he's trying to find an open receiver, his footwork gets so herky-jerky. I'm going to steal JT O'Sullivan, the QB school's terminology. He gets herky-jerky in the pocket. His footwork is not great. He overlooks receivers running across the middle for the easy checkdowns, and I don't necessarily think that's a problem, but it's not a world you want to live in and be in with a Derek Carr. Aaron Rodgers, man, you can't stack up the throws 1-to-1. Derek Carr's best throws of his career don't really hold the candle to Aaron Rodgers' best throws of his career. And Aaron Rodgers, with a hurt ligament in his thumb last year, was making absurd passes off one foot. His platform that he throws off of is very Mahomes-esque. So it's not so much that I hate Derek Carr. It's just the fact that if we have Aaron Rodgers even at 1% possibility, I'm clinging to that 1% because I'll take the 4-time MVP over the 4-time Pro Bowler. But I understand why everybody loves Derek Carr. I don't get scared of Derek Carr if I'm a defense.
Well, I just wanted to say hello. I was just busting your balls.
just saying hello. I got you.
So Bean, I don't know how
it was
much
a good show, man. I was working.
I made it 2 hours without the Derek
time.
Carr question. So thank you for that.
I was busting your balls today on Twitter.
I know.
I don't know. Hey, Bean, I don't know how far you've delved into the wide recievers yet, but what do you think of the idea of a guy like Jordan Addison who has a Chris Olave skill set lined up with Garrett Wilson on our offense?
Well, it's interesting how you talk about, which wide receiver did you say?
Addison,
Jordan Addison.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how you talk about it being a sneaky need. Like I went into the offseason honestly thinking wide receiver it wasn't even on my radar for some reason. And like, as I think about it, I am starting to like, you guys like Corey Davis, more than likely. It's just that 10 million in change is probably not worth it. He's injured. He drops the ball, all kinds of stuff that just that doesn't lock him into the team. We don't know really. I mean, look, we have faith in Elijah Moore, and we want to think that LaFleur was the issue with Moore and Mims and all that kind of shit. But Berrios, like the truth is we have tons of question marks right after Garrett Wilson. Yeah. So, and again, I have confidence, but I don't really know why. You know what I mean? Like I just do. Like there's reasons, but it's like it could be scary. Jordan Addison is an interesting prospect. Now, him a lot, alongside of Elijah Moore. I'm sorry. Alongside of Garrett Wilson could be freaky scary for defenses. And I think, the idea of having like a greatest show on turf kind of commitment to the offense, right? To the skill positions. That's so foreign to us. Like once we get a wide receiver, we're good because we never even get one. You know what I mean? The fact that this is the first time that we legitimately have a true, legitimate, like number one style receiver in Garrett Wilson.
Since Keyshawn probably, right?
Dude, I mean, look, we had Brandon Marshall, right? He's legit, but he was 56, I think, when we had him. So he was like at the end of his career. Like Braylon Edwards was, he had all the pieces, but he just never kind of got to number one status. He was very good. Santonio Holmes, very, very good. But Garrett Wilson's on another level. Like to be able to have Garrett Wilson and then stack on it. Like, yep, go and get him. Get, one of the top 3 receivers in the entire draft on most people's boards. Go ahead and do that and like commit to it that way. And then you get Brees Hall back and Michael Carter and you got Elijah Moore and Denzel. I think it could be electric, man. And look, Joe Douglas has done something that we haven't seen. I mean, in 3 years, he's used 2 first-round picks on offense, one on one first on a quarterback, one on a wide receiver, 2 second-round picks on wide receivers. Like, we're just not used to seeing even that level of commitment to the offense.
Yep.
So with all that behind him, I don't think it's all that fucking crazy to think that it might happen, actually.
Well,
Yeah, and I know you don't win on paper, but anybody that would look at a Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Jordan Addison, insert whatever tight end, insert whatever quarterback, the offensive line doesn't matter. I know, like, we say we're a quarterback away and we don't need a elite quarterback. We just need a middle tier quarterback. But if you get all those other pieces like the Jordan Addisons of the world, you don't need a top 10 offensive line. You can live in the 15 to 18 range with your offensive line and still be fine because your skill players are so dynamic that you create mismatches everywhere across the board.
Yeah, that's right. That's interesting. I mean, as long as you don't have a bottom 15 offensive, once you start going that way,
League average, you're fine.
Yeah, then it just could, because then it removes the potential that you could have all the skill guys in the world, but your quarterback, he's got 1.7 seconds to drop back, process, throw the ball. But if you do have let's say hypothetically, you have an Aaron Rodgers that can process everything you need him to process in those couple of seconds, and you have an offensive line that is league average, those skill guys like Garrett Wilson's getting open, Elijah Moore's getting open, Addison, dude, they're getting open, like they're going to be there. And then the focus being on those guys instantly opens up your tight ends and your backs in the
You become the greatest
game.
show on turf, in my opinion. If
really,
you insert a Rodgers and a top 15 to 12 offensive line, I truly believe that I know I mentioned it before you came in, but it was exaggeration, but 6,000 passing yards. If you have Jordan Addison, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Aaron Rodgers, 6,000 passing yards.
I mean,
can you imagine?
It'll be unheard of.
I wouldn't normally think that, before last year, I never would have thought it. Like, there's no way we're taking a wide receiver at 13. Don't be silly. But after the Sauce Gardner pick, I learned something about JD. I was like, it totally reshaped my thinking. This is a guy who really does write out his board and really does stick to the value. And wide receiver is a need without question. It's going to be a need at that time because Corey Davis will be gone. Berrios might even be gone. It's going to be a need. And if a guy like that is there, JD feels about him the way you guys feel about him, he's going to take him.
Yeah. Listen, Jeremy, we all see your intro, man. We know you didn't want Garrett Wilson at 10. we know you wanted that edge.
Funny.
No, I love those guys. I love those guys, and I'll say it a million times. Green Bean talked me into it about wanting the edge because the Green Bean. This is what you said that always got me thinking before the draft last year. We always talk ourselves out of an edge.
Always.
Every year,
and
we never have an edge. So I was so obsessed that we're finally going to get an edge.
Especially because it was a strong edge class up top.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, well, clearly this is going to be the year. And then when we didn't, dude, I didn't know what to make of it. As much as you like Sauce Gardner, I was convinced that we weren't going cornerback. I mean, I was laughing at people like, dude, you guys get your head out of your ass.
I had a tweet in my drafts on Twitter that said, despite how much I love Sauce, if they take one at 4 or 10, I will eat a baseball on Instagram Live. And I'm so glad I never hit send on that tweet because I would have eaten a baseball. But not to take away from how much you love Sauce. It just, everything that we heard coming out, it was not leaning towards cornerback being the pick. So good on them for being so tight-lipped that we had no idea. And we were going off on Ika Mekwonu, Kayvon Thibodeau, Jermaine Johnson's, and nope, it was Sauce. So.
Listen, Dylan, I gotta eat crow and live with the fact that for months upon months, I said that Sauce was the second best cornerback in the draft.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I
had
was
him as number one.
Guy.
He was number 4 on my board, and the 3 guys I had ahead of him, I'll catch flack for one, but they were almost all of them were available. I had Ikem at 1, KT at 2, Kyle Hamilton at 3, Sauce at 4. And him and Kyle had the same grade. So I was cool with any of them, but when all 3 were there, I was like, okay, this is this is offensive tackle. We're going to go lock down left tackle with Ika Mekwonu. They all turned out to be great players for their respective teams, even Kayvon Thibodeau to a degree. I mean, I don't like that he yells at legends of the games on Twitter, but I think they're all good players, but Sauce clearly was the best rookie out of any of them. So
yeah, it's funny. I felt the exact. I mean, I'm happy to hear what you said about Hamilton too. I was big. I loved more crow for Hamilton than any other opinion I had last year. It was Hamilton that gave me the most crap.
Yeah.
People were all, I don't know. I don't understand it.
He turned out to be a good player.
He's
the back
very
end of
good
his
player.
season for Baltimore was very good. People sleep on it because he had a bad preseason and week 1 and 2 he wasn't on the field a ton. But he's an alien. Like him and Sauce were built in a lab. The type of defensive backs they can be. So yeah, I agree. Kyle Hamilton is going to be a good player, despite what everybody likes to say about his 40 time.
I know it's all silliness, man. But you know what's funny about the edge rusher thing? Like when we didn't, I mean, look, we took Sauce. I don't think anybody was saying like he's going to be a bust. Like nobody felt that way. It was just positionally. What the fuck were you doing, man? Don't do that again. Never do that. You're going to get killed. Holy shit. So, my son just I'm out in the middle of the dark in the woods, and all of a sudden my door opens and somebody literally sprints in the room. I was gonna, I'm telling you, man, I went right into it's on mode. Sorry.
Green Bean leans fight in fight or flight.
Dude, yeah, man.
he's grabbing.
My heart is up. Everything. I mean, I would instant jacked up.
You were in fight mode.
Yeah,
I'm going to tell you one thing real fast. It's funny when you say what you took the most flack for. I'm famous because I did 1 million mock drafts last year. The thing I took the most flack for and got the most abuse for in those mock drafts, and this is funny because during the draft I wasn't thinking we're taking him and didn't even want
Breece Hall.
Was taking Breece Hall.
Yeah.
I took Breece Hall in the second round of my mock draft so many times, and people said you're nuts, you're crazy, and I said you don't understand. This is a very special player. But then when they actually took him, as you could see from my intros with the mock draft, I was like, oh my God, they took Breece Hall. I mean,
they listened to you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nuts. Like, so when we took Sauce, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was like blown away. Then so now, as much as I liked Garrett Wilson, I was still in the camp like we could very easily get a top tier receiver in the second, which would have been George Pickens for me. But like, so when we took Sauce, I'm like, all right, well now it's without question has to be an edge at 10. As much as I like Garrett Wilson, when we didn't go edge, I was like, we did it again.
Yeah.
Like yet again. And then when he traded up and we got Jermaine Johnson, I would have gone Karlaftis. I preferred Karlaftis, but either or, 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. The fact that both of those guys were still there, that's when everything started. Like the whole first round made sense to me all of a sudden. I'm like, okay. He knew to some degree, right?
Where his guy was going to fall. Yep.
Yeah. Even though he started calling at 15 and he thought every pick they were going to take him. Still, man, he knew that he didn't need to take him at 4. He didn't need to take him at 10. They were still going to get him, or at least have a shot to. That's when it made sense, man. And it really is one of the most impressive first rounds I've ever seen.
And using hindsight, I mean, it's a tremendous thing that he did it this way, getting the cornerback first, then the wide receiver, then the edge. Because if you did it in any other order, you're not getting the same 3 guys. You're not getting the same impactful players on this roster for 2022. So I think he executed the board perfectly. Obviously, he was going to move back up for Breece Hall and have 4 first-round picks, which just would have been incredible because that's what the reminiscent of the 2000 draft with Pennington. So, like, it would have been cool historically, but the fact that he executed it perfectly to a T and got all 4 impactful players is great.
And we actually got lucky because he was trying and he was going to give up a lot more to trade up for JJ. And like you were saying,
we would have missed out on Max Mitchell or Michael Clemens with one of those picks that he traded up with for sure.
And then he was going to give up more to trade up into the end of the first round for Breece Hall. So we got lucky that he was getting shut down. We actually got lucky.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because if he didn't trade up, and I watched this somewhere a long time ago. I forgot whose podcast it was, or I listened to, I should say. But if the trade for Jermaine Johnson didn't work out, he doesn't trade up for Breece Hall. they sit there and they take the next best
You
edge on
only
their
get
board,
one of them in that scenario.
which
Yeah.
would have been Boye Mafe from what they said the board read.
Wow.
So, but not trading up for, trading up for Jermaine Johnson gave him the comfortability to say, okay, we got our wide receiver, we got our cornerback, we got our edge. Now let's really go. Let's go fuck this whole thing up right here. Let's really make noise and go get the best offensive talent. Left on
Let's
the
make
board.
PFF George's head spin on his podcast because he has nice words to say about Breece Hall, despite him being the runaway offensive rookie of the year through 7 games. But
yeah, he would have been, man. And it's
100%.
Did you hear Garrett Wilson? Garrett Wilson actually said that. They were interviewing him at the awards, and he said it's crazy that we have both, Sauce and myself, but we have Breece too. He probably would have won Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he would have. Look at the difference, and look, obviously we can't say for sure that the second half of the season he would have still been what he was in the first half, but it sure as hell looked like when he went down, the whole season kind of went down the shitter. Like we kind of held on and we were 1-score losses. We're still good. We're still close. But Breece being there would have been the X factor in a lot of those games.
He was getting better. He was getting better.
Oh, yeah.
He
said the game had slowed down for him. He said defenders don't want to come down into the box and tackle him. I believe he was talking to LaDainian Tomlinson during the Super Bowl week, and he said players just don't want to come down and tackle, so it makes my job a lot easier. And so once the game slowed down for him, it was over for the rest of the league. And going back to Garrett Wilson, I don't think I've ever met somebody so young or seen somebody so young, especially at the wide receiver position, who's willing to give flowers to another person. He said Sauce beat him numerous times in practice one-on-one. He's constantly saying Breece Hall would have won Offensive Rookie of the Year. I've never seen a wide receiver this young have this much, I guess, humility, or, he's this humble about where he's at in his career, knowing that he's still going to be a great one, but still gives flowers to everybody else. You can't say enough good things about Garrett Wilson, the person.
Perfect guy to have. He's just
exactly
every way.
The best. And Jeremy, you were talking about it before. Like his character, it's one, it's good to have hardworking guys and good, team guys and all that. But Garrett Wilson is another level of that character, like that drive. Like you could see it. Like it's just something that we're not used to seeing here, man. And he's a truly special personality in addition to the talent that he brings. And you combine that, with a real quarterback, man. Like think about that. He did 1,100 and change with truly abysmal quarterback play. Truly
32 out of 32 quarterback play.
Right. It's unbelievable, man. Like the worst. And that's the thing. Like we don't even know what we'd be if we just had average. We haven't had average quarterback play since Ryan Fitzpatrick, and before that it was it was Mark Sanchez in 2010, whatever, but it's like so few and far between. We're not just average, we suck. Like we have the worst or the most turnovers. Like Sanchez was the most turnover quarterback in the league for 2 years. He goes, we bring in Geno, he wins most turnovers in the league. Like what the hell is that? How do we do that? How do we so perfectly get everybody that's the worst? It's amazing.
Yep. You know who averages 19 turnovers a season?
Who's that?
Derek Carr.
Yeah, great.
No, I'm just saying, I just had to post the bear because I know Jets fans will get sick the first time he starts fumbling the ball like that. But I don't think it's going to be a huge problem for him in New York.
How many touchdowns does he average a year?
Exactly. Yes, that's the point. You got to balance the good with the bad.
Right. Yeah, he's going to give you 25 to 30 touchdowns. He's going to give you
exactly.
12, he's going to give you 12 interceptions, but he's going to give you 4,000 yards and a 65% completion.
That's right.
Yep.
And imagine this: more than 10 touchdowns. Imagine that. 3 years.
I don't even know what that means. Yeah. No. Yeah. I don't even know what that means.
It's nuts.
We have a fullback at quarterback in Chris Streveler. I don't know. 10 touchdowns.
I know. And he looked better. Like that's the craziness. It's just, it really is something, man. Like, and I know, and I do relate to the argument that our kind of perception is tainted, right? We were talking about it in a stream I did before, like the opinion of Joe Douglas is skewed because of just how bad it's truly been here, right? So, and I get that. I think that's legitimate. At the same time, when you're looking at guys like a Rodgers, like, because look, Rodgers has his warts too, and not least of which is he's old and he looks like he could be heading downward. We don't know. Maybe just bad year, whatever. But he's old and all that kind of. But when you have Rodgers, Carr, and even if he was healthy, a Jimmy G or a guy like those guys are legitimate quarterbacks. And if you do have a good team around them, they are good enough to win in this NFL. And you got the argument all the time, like, oh, well, Carr can't compete with Mahomes. That's complete horseshit because he's done it numerous times. But in addition to that, he's not competing with Mahomes. Sauce Gardner, Quinn Williams. Right. They're the ones.
Yeah,
if our defense is fucking, it really is crazy. And I get it, Dylan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
listening
it's a crazy
previews
argument
of Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts is just sickening in my mind because one, they don't see the field at the same time. So you're talking about the complete wrong thing. You have to talk about defenses versus these quarterbacks. And yeah, I don't see a scenario where Derek Carr comes in and he shits the bed. I see that consistent floor being with Derek Carr the whole way. Obviously, I'm going to root for the upside of Aaron Rodgers, but no, I think that's what gets lost on Twitter is the I love pancakes, you hate waffles argument is just because I'm not in love with Derek Carr doesn't mean I wouldn't be very happy with him as our quarterback because I'm tired of seeing Mike White get his ribs destroyed by Matt Milano. And I'm tired of Joe Flacco getting sacked before he even gets to the back of his 5-step drop because he just doesn't care to be out there. So I want these things instead, but yeah, I'm going to root for upside, but I completely agree. Just get a guy in there that's going to just be consistent and just hope that
Jeremy, how many times do I say it? Jeremy, how many times do I say it? And I mean this sincerely. This is all you need to win in the NFL 100% of the time. 4 yards a carry, 6 to 10 minute drives. It's a fucking wrap. And if we can do that, 4 yards a play, that's all we need. Don't overcomplicate it. We'll drive down. You keep your defense fresh. You're free. If your defense will come out and shut them down, half the time you win the game. And that's what Derek Carr can absolutely do that. And then some. And I'd be look, I want to make sure I say this. Aaron Rodgers, I think Aaron Rodgers is one for me, and should be for the Jets, I think, for myriad reasons. But Carr, if that's the way we go, there's going to be a lot of Jets fans that are upset, and that I don't really relate to. I don't get it.
Right. No, right. I don't see
feeling limitless.
How can you be upset? I'm sorry.
I'm saying, you can't. I mean, the guy 4 out of 5 4 out of 5 times the last year, with the exception of this horrendous coach that came in that we know is a complete failure. He was top 10 DVOA, which I trust a lot. I think it's a good rating system. Top 10 quarterback in the league with a top 5 defense in the league. With there's just no way that I could see Jet fans or understand why they wouldn't be happy with Carr. But Dylan, what you said really resonated with me. I totally agree with you. The reality is, though, the difference between Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr is Aaron Rodgers strikes fear in the defense. And I know that as a Jet fan. When we played against Aaron Rodgers, when we played against Green Bay or the Raiders, I was definitely, even last year, never thinking we had the game won because I fear Aaron Rodgers a lot more than I fear Derek Carr. And I think we can all agree on that. He definitely strikes more fear. And that's why he's our number one.
But the trick is he's not even free agent. He's not even really available yet.
Sure.
That's the other part about it. And that's what it was. That's what it was, Dylan. It was that's what started me saying, all right, I'm gonna bust this guy's balls today.
Oh no, that's completely fine. I'm fine with
I know. I mean, dude, you're me and you, we're fine, right? But it's but when you said the bird in the hand, because that's the thing. So, I do think there's value in that. If you can guaranteed to get Carr and you could lose him for what might be Aaron Rodgers, that does freak me out a little bit.
Yeah, and I guess I refuse to pay for Twitter Blue, so I have the characters to actually articulate what I want to say every time on Twitter. But the bird in the hand comment was more of just because he was on a meeting with the Jets this weekend, fans thought it was a done deal. He wanted to be in New York. New York obviously wants him. They can't let him leave without a deal. I came into that thinking he was never coming to New York to a meeting for a deal. If they got a deal, it was just to say, hey, look what he offered me here. I'll bring this to Carolina, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and I'll drive my price up. So that was where the bird in the hand came from. But yes, if the Jets want Derek Carr and they know that Derek Carr wants the Jets, that part hasn't been confirmed yet, despite the meeting.
Right.
If he wants the Jets,
Totally.
yes, then he is the bird in the hand until Aaron Rodgers gets out. I believe it was Matt O'Leary, big fan of the pod, big friend of the pod. He came on and said that he did his video saying the timelines for Rodgers and Carr could very much intersect. If Carr slow plays this whole thing and doesn't want to make a deal until, let's just say, March 1st, that gives Aaron Rodgers plenty of time to come out of his darkness retreat, wherever he is in the stage of it, even if he didn't get to it yet, and come out and make the decision before Carr signs with the team. So if those roads intersect at all, yes, you have to do whatever you can to get Rodgers, in my opinion. Somebody put in the comments at 11:41, we thought last year was the most important year because of the draft picks that we had to hit on. And now it's because he has to land one of the two quarterbacks. And it's just so funny how the last 3 seasons, it's literally been, this is the most important offseason for the Jets.
Yeah.
It just continues to happen. It's amazing how it works.
We're funny.
It's
It's the most important offseason in our history. It's what
it's
it
a
is.
flat circle.
Every year.
It's a flat circle.
Yep.
I don't want to be the party pooper, and it's sad because I'm the youngest in this group. But I got a text saying I have to work at the beach, which is 2 hours away, and I have to wake up at 4:45 in the morning. And right now it is 11:46 local time, so I might have to slide on out of here.
Well, I got it. Well, listen, let me get out of here and let you guys do your goodbyes and everything. But look, man, good show tonight, all 3 of you. I listened the whole show. It was great. And you guys all have a good night. Good to see you, Dylan.
Great to see you, Green Bean. Thanks,
Green Bean. Take care.
Later, guys.
Yeah, I was saying we got to wrap up too. I got an angry wife downstairs waiting to watch a movie because I'm off tomorrow, and she's like, tonight's to be a movie night. Hey, look, thank you, but thanks of course to everybody in the chat. You guys make the show. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. It wouldn't be a show without you. So thanks everybody in the chat, and thanks for everybody who watches it later, and thanks for everybody who's watching but not chatting. But hey, Dylan, thank you so much. I knew when Dom asked for you to come on, I right away told him I trust your judgment, and you know, I obviously you justified that. You were awesome. Like I say to Dom, you know, anytime you want to come on and use this platform, I'm honored to have you. So just, you know, I followed you on Twitter, follow me back so you could DM me anytime you need a platform. You are so welcome here on this channel. So just know that anytime.
Well, that means
Dom,
a lot.
Yeah, no, of course. And Dom, thanks for bringing a new family member into the channel. Yeah. And thank you for everything you do. This show's great. I rarely look forward to off seasons, but this was the first one I look forward to in the sense that I knew that me and Dom would have this show every Sunday because I love it.
Yeah. Dylan, you want to let the chat know what you got going on?
Yeah, sure. For right now, I'm just doing a podcast once a week for Jet Nation. My co-host Glenn Naughton and I, we do every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. live on YouTube, so you can come back in the same format, be in the chat. We'll definitely interact with you. We usually go over the breaking news for the week. You know, we covered Todd Downing and the pecking order of the quarterbacks that was reported by Connor Hughes. And then for the back half of the show, we kind of do what this show's structure was, and we talk about a couple prospects, not necessarily ranking them, but we definitely talk about prospects for the majority of our shows now. Glenn is one of the biggest Jets guys that I can think of in terms of the draft. He has his own separate account that he just floods Twitter with links of prospects, videos, every guy from 1st to 7th round guys. So he's a huge help on the show. We're actually thinking about making a draft show through Jet Nation. But yeah, in the meantime, just follow me on Twitter at @DTerman. Some of my takes you might not agree with, especially if you think I hate Derek Carr, but I'm always down to chop it up. I'm very open-minded, I think, for being a younger Jets fan. I'm not even 28 yet, so I think there's a ton that I'm not, experienced on. I think age is a luxury for me when it comes to being a Jets fan because I don't know the history as well, the horrible history that it seems to be. But I'm always down to chop it up. I like new opinions. I love following people back, getting their opinions. So at DTerman, you can find me, and and let's have some good fun this offseason and not do the pointless, annoying arguments about quarterback hypotheticals.
Thanks so much, man. And Tom?
Well, everyone hopefully follows me on Twitter already at DC_NY Jets. Tomorrow, I will be co-hosting the Monday Night Mock, 10 p.m. on Green Bean's channel. Tuesday, I'm pretty excited. I will be putting out the first edition of the Project Prospect podcast. It's a lot of P's. And I'll be interviewing Nick Merriman from Defiant Takes, who's their NFL draft coordinator there. We're going to be chatting it up, and we're going to be talking about prospects that he thinks are and I think are good fits or really good fits for the Jets. I know we touch on a little bit of a bigger scope of prospects on Sunday night, but now we're going to be honing it down. I'll be honing it down with Nick on guys that might fit for the Jets when we pick, where we pick, so on and so forth. And that obviously is going to be put out through Green Bean's YouTube channel. And outside of that, I think that's all I got going right now.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to that on Tuesday night. That'll be great. And Sean Nolte, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that.
Salty Nalty.
We love you, brother. We love you.
Yeah,
And,
next Sunday. I saw Grandizer ask it.
Yeah.
What do you want to do? You want to do? We went offense. You want to go back to defense? You want to do D tackles? You want to do edge? What?
Let's do edge.
We're gonna do edge.
Let's do edge. We're going to go over the top 10 edge. You never know. We might take one because we don't know what's going to happen. If we cut Lawson, they might feel that they need another guy. It could be another sneaky need, right?
Yeah.
Not a super big need, but a sneaky little need of, based on the fact that that's what our defense is predicated on. Lots of rotation, lots of guys who can come in and create havoc and pressure. I will be back on Wednesday night with my co-host Watu2K. And we might have a lot to talk about by then. There's a lot going on. We're on the clock for some big potential news. So make sure you guys catch that. Of course, Thursday night, we'll be, I'll be backstage producing and doing my thing and sometimes popping into Green Bean show Thursday night, thick of it. So I'd love to, enjoy that as well. You guys know, everybody here knows the deal, so I don't have to say it. But again, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Great night. Really excited and just blown away that this is happening on my channel. So thanks, everybody, and take care. Good night. Greatest co-host in the world! Watu2K99. Get ready to rumble!
The tag team champions of the world!
My brotherly crevasse
That is the best intro I have ever received.
the world. The Buffalo Jets fan.
Yo!
George Fant is a barely above replacement level, pretty good left tackle.
How can you say
Compare
that when
that
he
to
was
an-
top 3 in sack percentage last year for left tackles?
And I think when in doubt, until you have better reason, go with the optimistic view. And our defensive line is going to be giving a lot of people some trouble.
But yeah, it's got to be. I'm with you. I don't like the Nathan's fries when they're like floppy. It's got to be like done really well. It's very hard to teach 6'3" and 4.3 speed. That's very rare. The talent's there. He's just got to put it together mentally.
Right.
To get onto you, I'm a cheater.